The man pressed the barrel of the gun against the back of Maya Reynolds' skull and laughed. "Nod if you understand me," he said. "Nod or I paint this sidewalk with you." Then he leaned in close enough that she could smell cigarettes on his breath and whispered a name. Her mother's name, her mother's address, her mother's bedtime. That was his mistake. If you love stories about ordinary people who refuse to break, please subscribe to this channel and stay with me all the way to the end. And leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from, because I want to see just how far this story has traveled. Maya Reynolds had run that same 3-mile loop for 211 consecutive evenings. She knew the cracked square of pavement in front of the Delgado house. She knew the dog behind the fence on Wexler Court that barked at nothing every single night at 6:18. She knew that the street light at the corner of Bramble and Fifth flickered twice before it caught. 211 evenings, and she had never once been afraid. She wasn't afraid now either. That was the strange part. That was the part she would think about later, lying awake at 2 in the morning, staring at a ceiling she couldn't see. 3 men had come out of a gray van with no plates, and one of them had a gun against her head, and the only thing she felt was a cold, quiet clarity, like water settling. "I said nah," the man repeated. Maya nodded, slowly. Once. Good girl. She filed that away, not out of anger, out of habit. Every word a man says when he thinks he's winning is a word he'll never take back, and every word tells you something. This one wanted obedience more than he wanted results. That meant he wasn't a professional. Professionals want results. Amateurs want theater. There were 3 of them. She had counted before the van door finished sliding open, because counting was the first thing they taught you and the last thing you ever forgot. 3. 2 with visible weapons, 1 with his hands empty, and the one with empty hands was the dangerous one, because empty hands meant he was there to talk. And men who came to talk were men who had been sent by someone. Maya Reynolds, the empty-handed one, said. He had a voice like a customer service representative. Pleasant, rehearsed. "Do you know why we're here?" "I have a guess." "Say it." "You want me to quit a job." The man smiled. He actually smiled, and something in Maya's chest went very still, because she had seen that smile before on 3 continents, on men who had already decided how the evening was going to end. "See," he said, turning to the one holding the gun. "She's smart. I told you she was smart. Smart people are easy. It's the stupid ones who make you work." "I'm not going to quit," Maya said. The smile stayed. The eyes changed. "You didn't let me finish." "I don't need you to finish. You're going to tell me about my mother again. You already told me her address. You already told me she goes to bed at 9:30 and takes a pill for her heart and sleeps with the window cracked because the house gets warm. You want me to understand that you can reach her." "I understand, so skip that part and tell me the rest." There was a silence on that street that lasted maybe 3 seconds and felt like a decade. Somewhere down the block, a screen door slapped shut. A television laughed at something. The man with the gun shifted his weight. She heard it. That was the second thing she filed away, because a man who shifts his weight is a man who is uncomfortable, and a man who is uncomfortable while holding a gun is a man who has not decided anything yet. "The rest," the empty-handed one said slowly, "is that you have 24 hours. You call Atlas Defense on Monday morning, and you tell them your health isn't what it used to be. You tell them your knees. You tell them anything. You tell them you're grateful for the opportunity, and you're stepping away. And then you live a very long and very boring life in this very nice neighborhood, and nobody ever visits your mother. And if I don't, then I'd rather not say out loud what happens. There are children in some of these houses." Maya breathed out through her nose. 211 evenings. The dog on Wexler Court barked at nothing. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You can ask." "Who sent you?" The man laughed. It was a real laugh, warm, almost affectionate, the laugh of a man who has just heard a child ask why the sky doesn't fall. "That's not how this works." "It might be." "No, it really isn't." "Then let me put it a different way." Maya kept her hands where they were loose at her sides, palms open, the picture of a frightened woman who had run out of options. "The man who sent you told you I was a consultant. He told you I did paperwork. He told you I sat in a room and drew diagrams of fences. He told you I was a woman alone on a street with no one coming. And you believed him because he pays you and because It was easier to believe than the alternative. Lady. Did he tell you where I worked before Atlas? The pleasant voice went a little flat. He told me you were Navy. He told you was Navy, Maya repeated. Not what I did in it. The man with the gun shifted his weight again, and this time the empty-handed one heard it too, and something crossed his face, something quick and small and human. And Maya thought, there it is. There's the crack. You have 24 hours, he said, and his voice had lost its warmth. Don't make me come back. They got in the van. The door slid shut. The van pulled away at exactly the speed limit, which told her more about them than anything else that had happened in the last 90 seconds, because men who drive the speed limit after threatening someone are men who have done it before and expect to do it again. Maya stood on the sidewalk for a long moment. Then she reached up and touched the back of her head where the barrel had been. Her fingers came away with a small smear of gun oil. She looked at it, and then alone on a quiet suburban street in Virginia at 6:22 in the evening, Maya Reynolds started laughing. Not a happy laugh, a tired one. The laugh of a woman who had spent 11 years praying that the world would finally leave her alone and who had just been told once and for all that it wasn't going to. She finished her run. That detail matters. She finished the run. The last mile and a half, the same pace past the Delgado house in the dawn and the flickering light breathing steady, because she had learned a long time ago in a very bad place that the moment you let fear change your schedule is the moment you have already surrendered something you cannot get back. When she came through her own front door, she didn't turn on the lights. She stood in the dark hallway of her own house and listened to it. The refrigerator hummed. The clock in the kitchen ticked. Everything exactly as it had been that morning, and she hated how much she had come to love it. This ordinary quiet, this life she had built out of nothing but stubbornness and a VA loan. Alone. Then she went into the kitchen, opened the drawer under the coffee maker, and took out a phone that had never been used. She dialed a number she had memorized 11 years ago and had never once called. It rang 4 times. You have the wrong number, a man's voice said. Ghost. There was a pause on the line. A long one. Long enough that Maya could hear him breathing and could hear faintly a television in the background and a woman's voice asking who it was. Nobody, the man called back away from the phone. Telemarketer. A door closed. When he spoke again, the warmth was gone and something much older was in its place. Say it again, he said. Ghost. Maya. He exhaled. Maya, you swore to me you would never call this number. I know. You swore. On the beach in Coronado, you looked me in the eye. I know what I said. Then you understand what it means that you're saying it now. Yes, another silence, then quieter. Who's dead? Nobody, Maya said. Yet. She heard him sit down. She heard a chair take his weight, and she pictured him, Daniel Ghost Okonkwo, 62 pounds heavier than the last time she'd seen him, a mortgage, a daughter in college, a job installing security systems for people who thought a keypad by the door made them safe. Talk, he said. So she talked. She told him about the van and the 3 men and the pleasant voice and her mother's bedtime. And when she got to that part, the part about her mother, she heard him make a sound she hadn't heard from him since a rooftop in a country she still couldn't legally name. They said her name, he said. They said her name. Out loud, to your face. Out loud, to my face. Maya. His voice had gone very soft, and she knew that softness, and she knew what lived underneath it. Maya, do you know what that means? It means they're stupid. No, it means somebody told them it would work. He paused. Somebody who's watched you. Somebody who thinks the mother is the button. And the only way anybody knows the mother is the button is if they've read something that isn't public. Maya closed her eyes. That was the thing she had been trying not to think for the last 40 minutes. And Ghost had said it out loud in less than 5. And that was why she had called him and no one else. Yeah, she said. Yeah, he agreed. So it's not just the cartel. It was never just the cartel. Outside, a car went by. Maya watched the headlights crawl across her ceiling and disappear. Ghost. Don't. I haven't asked yet. You don't have to ask. I can hear the shape of it from here. She heard him rub his face with his hand, that same sandpaper sound he'd made in 100 briefing rooms. 11 years, Maya. 11 years, and you never called. Not when Rios died. Not when they put up the plaque. Not when I sent you the thing about the reunion, and don't tell me you didn't get it because I know you got it. I got it. Then why now? Maya opened her eyes. In the dark, the kitchen looked like every kitchen she had ever stood in at 2 in the morning waiting for a mission to start. Because they made it a choice, she said. For 11 years, nobody made it a choice. It was just something that happened to me. Now somebody put a gun to my head and told me to choose, and I looked at him. Ghost, I looked right at him, and I realized I already had. She heard him breathe. Say the words, he said. I need you. Say all of them. I need you, and I don't have the right to ask, and I'm asking anyway. For a long time, Daniel Okonkwo didn't say anything at all, and then in a voice she remembered from a very long time ago, he said, where and when. Maya Reynolds put her hand flat on her own kitchen counter and held onto it because her legs had suddenly decided they were tired. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. You haven't heard my price. Name it. When this is over, you come to the reunion. You stand there and you let 300 people say your name out loud and you don't run out of the room. That's not a price. That's a punishment. I know, Ghost said. Where and when? She told him. The next morning, Maya Reynolds walked into the Atlas Defense Solutions building in Arlington, Maryland at 8:04 a.m. and did not tell one single person what had happened yet on that sidewalk. That was deliberate. She rode up in the elevator with a man named Preston who worked in accounts and who told her at length about his boat. She smiled in the right places. She said, wow, twice. And the entire time she was watching the reflection in the polished elevator doors, watching the two other people in the car, with her watching which floor they got off on and whether they looked at her when they did. One of them did. A woman, mid-30s, badge on a lanyard, coffee in hand, perfectly ordinary. She got off on 4, and her eyes came up and touched Maya's for exactly 1/2 second too long, and then she was gone into the hallway, and the doors slid closed. Maya's face didn't change. Inside her chest, something quietly went to war. The meeting was at 9, 6 people around a table and a slide deck and a plate of pastries that nobody touched. Maya sat with her back to the wall out of a habit she had stopped apologizing for a decade ago. Before we begin, said the man at the head of the table, I want to formally welcome Maya Reynolds to Atlas. Maya's taking over the Meridian project as director of site security. He put his hands together. Maya, we're thrilled. There was polite applause. Maya nodded. I have a question, she said. Of course. How did Thomas Vance die? The applause had barely finished. It hung in the room unfinished, like a note nobody had resolved. The man at the head of the table was named Gerald Whitlock, and he was a senior vice president, and he had a photograph of his grandchildren on his desk, and he did not stop smiling. That was the first thing Maya noticed. He did not stop smiling, but every muscle around the smile stopped working. Thomas had a heart attack, he said. In a car. In a car, yes, tragic. At 2 in the morning. He kept late hours. On a road that doesn't go anywhere he had any business being. Nobody in that room moved. There was a woman at the far end, young, maybe 28, and Maya watched her hand tighten around her pen until the knuckles went white. Maya, Whitlock said gently, I understand that stepping into a role after a tragedy is difficult, but I'd caution you against, was there an autopsy? I beg your pardon. An autopsy. Was one performed? Whitlock's smile finally mercifully died. I don't know. You don't know. It wasn't He was your director of site security, Maya said. He worked for you for 9 years. He died in a car at 2 in the morning on a road to nowhere, and you don't know if anybody looked at his body. The silence in that room had weight. It sat on the table like a third pastry nobody was going to touch. There was no autopsy, said a voice. Everyone turned. It was the young woman at the end with the pen. Her name was Ruth Alvarez. She was a systems analyst. She had been at Atlas for 14 months, and her voice was shaking so badly she had to say it twice. There was no autopsy, she said again. His wife asked for one. She asked twice. Legal told her it would complicate the insurance. Ruth, Whitlock said. She asked twice. Ruth said louder. Ruth, he was my friend. Maya looked at that young woman for a long moment, and then she said very quietly, thank you. Ruth Alvarez put her pen down and stared at the table, and her eyes were shining and she did not cry, and Maya thought there. That's one. In a room of 6, that's one. You could build something out of one. The meeting ended 20 minutes early. Whitlock caught her in the hallway. He caught her by the elbow, actually put his hand on her, and Maya let him because she wanted to know what he would do with it. That was a mistake, he said. Which part? You embarrassed me in front of my staff. Gerald, Maya said, and she said his first name the way you'd say it to a child who'd broken a window. A man is dead and you didn't ask a single question and you're worried about being embarrassed. You don't understand the position I'm in. Then explain it to me. He didn't answer. Explain it to me, she said again. Right now, nobody's listening. Just you and me. Tell me what you're afraid of. For one moment, one single moment, Gerald Whitlock's face came apart. Maya saw a 61-year-old man with a good haircut and a bad conscience, and she saw him almost say it. Then the elevator dinged behind him, and the shutters came down, and he was an executive again. Be careful, Maya, he said. That's all. Be careful. That's not all. It's all I have. He walked away, and Maya stood in that hallway and understood with total clarity that Gerald Whitlock was not the enemy. Gerald Whitlock was a hostage who didn't know it yet. Her phone buzzed at 11:40. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail because she had learned a very long time ago that the first call is never the important one. It's the second call, the one they make when they're annoyed, that tells you what they actually want. It rang again at 11:41. She answered. You didn't call Atlas, said the pleasant voice. It's Friday. I said Monday. I said 24 hours. You said Monday morning. You said, and I'm quoting you, you call Atlas Defense on Monday morning. You also said 24 hours. Those two things don't fit together, and you didn't notice because you were reading somebody else's script. Maya let that sit. Whoever wrote it for you doesn't respect you very much. The silence on the line was beautiful. You think you're funny, the voice said. I think you're a middleman. You think. I think somebody handed you a page and told you to say it, and you couldn't even keep the deadline straight for 90 seconds. That's not a criticism of you. That's a criticism of them. If I were you, I'd be a little insulted. Lady, I will come to that house. You know my mother's bedtime, Maya said, but you don't know mine. That's the part that should worry you. She hung up. Then she sat down in the stairwell, the Atlas Defense Building, on the concrete step between 4 and 5, and she put her head in her hands, and for about 90 seconds she shook. Hard. All the way through, the way you do when the adrenaline finally gets tired of holding the door. Nobody saw it. Nobody ever did. At 12:15, she was back at her desk, and her hands were steady, and she was making a list. At 3 p.m., she called her mother. Well, look who remembers her mother exists, Eleanor Reynolds said. Hi, Mom. 2 weeks, Maya. 2 weeks and not a word. I could have died. I could be lying on the kitchen floor right now talking to you as a ghost. You'd complain about the reception. I would. It's terrible in that kitchen. A pause, the sound of a chair, the sound of her mother sitting down, which meant she was settling in. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Maya Louise. Mom, you called me at 3 in the afternoon on a Friday. You don't call me on Fridays? You call me on Sundays because Sundays are when guilty people call their mothers. A beat. So what's wrong? Maya looked out her office window at the parking lot at the gray van that was not there at the gray van that was going to be there eventually, and she made a decision that she would question for the rest of her life. I want you to go stay with Aunt Deb for a while, she said. The silence on that line was different from all the other silences that day. It was older. It had known her since before she could walk. Why, Eleanor said. Not a question. Because I'd like it. Maya. Because I'm asking. Maya Louise Reynolds, you listen to me. I sat in this house for 11 months while you were somewhere you couldn't tell me about, and I didn't ask one question, not one. And when you came home, you weighed 109 pounds, and you flinched when I hugged you, and I still didn't ask. I have earned the right to a straight answer. Why? Maya closed her eyes. Because somebody said your name to me, she said, and I want them to be wrong about what that gets them. She heard her mother breathe in. She waited for the fear. She had braced for the fear, had planned the next 4 sentences around. It had already decided how she would talk her mother down. What she got instead was this, well, Eleanor Reynolds said, isn't that just like a coward? Mom, saying an old woman's name to her daughter's face. In my day, we'd have called that a very small man. The sound of a cabinet opening, of a kettle. Deb's spare room smells like potpourri and I hate it, How long? I don't know. Guess. 3 weeks, maybe more. Then I'm taking my own pillow. A pause, then more quietly in a voice Maya had heard exactly twice in her life, once at a funeral and once at a hospital. Baby, are you going to be all right? Maya opened her mouth to say yes. I'm going to be busy, she said instead. That's not what I asked. I know. Her mother laughed wetly. God, you sound just like your father. They hung up. Maya sat with the phone in her hand for a long, long time. At 6:30 that evening, Ghost was on her porch. He was bigger than she remembered and older than she wanted him to be, and he was wearing a polo shirt with a security company logo on the chest. And when she opened the door, he looked at her for a full 5 seconds without saying anything at all. You cut your hair, he said finally. 11 years ago. I don't like it. Nobody asked you. He came inside. He walked into her living room and stood there in the middle of a rug she'd bought at a store next to a bookshelf with actual books on it, and Maya watched him take in the whole life she'd built, the whole quiet, ordinary, carefully assembled proof that she was a normal person, and she saw the exact moment his throat moved. You did good, he said. This is good, Maya. Don't. I'm just saying it's Ghost. He turned around, and there was so much on his face that she had to look at the wall. You didn't come to the plaque, he said. No. Rios's kid asked about you. He was 6. He said, is that lady coming, the one from the picture? And I said yes, because I was sure. I was so sure, Maya. I stood there and I told a 6-year-old boy that you were coming. Ghost. And you didn't come. The clock in the kitchen ticked. The refrigerator hummed. I got as far as the parking lot, Maya said. He went very still. I sat there for 2 hours, she said. I could hear the bagpipes. I sat in my car in that parking lot, and I listened to the whole thing, and when everybody started coming out, I drove away, and I pulled over on Route 50, and I threw up on the shoulder of the road, and then I went home. She looked at him. So don't tell me I didn't come. I came. I just couldn't get out of the car. Daniel Okonkwo stood in her living room with his hands at his sides. Okay, he said. Okay. Okay, he rubbed his face. Okay, okay. He sat down heavily on her couch, and it groaned, and he laughed at it, and the sound broke something open in the room that had been closed for 11 years. Your couch is judging me. It's an honest couch. It's a coward's couch. He looked up at her. Sit down. Tell me the whole thing again from the top, and this time don't leave out the parts where you were scared. So she did. And when she finished, he sat forward with his elbows on his knees, and he said, Show me the phone. She showed him the burner. He turned it over in his hands. 2 calls, he said, 1140 and 1141. Yes. Both from the same unknown number. Maya stopped. She actually stopped all the way, and the room went cold, because in 12 hours of thinking about 100 things she had not thought about that one. Ghost saw it happen on her face. Maya, he said, carefully. How did they get this number? They didn't. That's my work cell. How did they get your work cell? It's in the directory. The internal directory. Yes. Which is behind a badge. The refrigerator hummed. Maya, Ghost said very slowly, the man on that sidewalk knew your mother's bedtime. That's not surveillance. Surveillance gets you an address. Bedtime is a file. Bedtime is somebody who read a background check. He set the phone down on her coffee table like it was something that might go off. Who ran your background check for Atlas? Maya didn't answer. Maya. Atlas did, she said. Right. Atlas ran it. Right, Ghost said. So they're not coming for you at work. He looked at her, and she looked at him, and 11 years fell away like a coat. They're already there, she said. Somewhere down the block, the dog on Wexler Court began to bark. At 9:14 that night, Maya Reynolds put a legal pad on her kitchen table and wrote 9 names on it. Ghost stood behind her with a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. Explain the 9. 9 people at Atlas had access to my full background packet. HR ran it, legal reviewed it, and security signed it. That's 3 departments and 9 badges. You memorized the routing list. I read the routing list. That's not what I said. It's what happened, Maya said. She tapped the pad. 2 of them are junior. They see a name and a social and a date. They don't see the narrative section. What's in the narrative section? Maya didn't look up. My mother. Ghost set the coffee down. Her name, Her address, her medical history, her routine, Maya said. Because when they clear you for overseas work, they don't just look at you. They look at what can be used against you. They interview your neighbors. They ask your pharmacist. They write down that Eleanor Reynolds takes a beta blocker at 9 and goes to bed at 9:30 because the pill makes her sleepy. She finally looked up. That's not spying, Ghost. That's paperwork. Somebody read it in an office with the door open and a bagel on the desk. And then handed it to a man with a gun. And then handed it to a man with a gun. The clock in the kitchen ticked. 7 names, Ghost said. 7 names. At 9:41, he crossed out 2 of them. Why those schwa? Because I know them, he said, not personally. I know the shape. Look at the titles. Deputy Counsel and Assistant Director of Compliance. Those 2 spent 30 years learning to never touch anything without a signature on it. A man like that doesn't hand a file to a criminal. He'd have a stroke first. That's not evidence. No, Ghost agreed. It's 26 years of watching people. You want evidence, go get a warrant. You want to sleep tonight, cross them off. Maya crossed them off. 5 names. At 9:58, her phone buzzed, and she looked at it, and her stomach did something unpleasant because the name on the screen was Gerald Whitlock, and it was 10 o'clock on a Friday night. She let it ring. Answer it, Ghost said. No. Maya. If I answer, he tells me a story he's had 4 hours to write. If I don't answer, he has to keep writing it, and by Monday, it's too long, and long stories have seams. She turned the phone face down. Let him write. It rang 11 times over the next hour. Whitlock never left a message. Not one. And that told her more than any message could have, because a man with nothing to hide leaves a voicemail. A man with something to hide is afraid of his own recorded voice. At 11:52, a different number called. That's not him, Ghost said. Maya answered. Is this Maya Reynolds? The voice was young and pitched too high, and there was traffic behind it. This is Ruth Alvarez, from the meeting. Ruth? I know it's late. I know it's really late. I've been sitting in my car for 2 hours trying to decide if I'm crazy. Where are you? I don't know, a parking lot. There's a Denny's. Ruth, listen to me. I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to answer it fast without thinking. Are you scared of something specific, or are you scared in general? Specific, Ruth said instantly, and then made a small sound like she'd surprised herself. Oh God, specific. Good. Don't move. Don't go home. I'm coming to you. At 12:31 in the morning, Maya slid into a booth across from a 28-year-old systems analyst who had cried so much her eyelashes had clumped into points and who had a laptop bag clutched against her chest like a life vest. Ghost sat one booth over with his back to them and ordered pancakes. Who's that? Ruth whispered. Nobody. He's enormous. He's very sensitive about it. Ruth, look at me. What's in the bag? Ruth Alvarez's hands were shaking so badly she had to try the zipper 3 times. Tom's laptop, she said. The diner was loud. A busser dropped a tray somewhere. Someone laughed at a table in the back, and it was 2 in the morning, laughter the ugly kind. Say that again, Maya said. Thomas Vance's laptop, his work laptop, the one that was supposed to be wiped and returned to inventory on March 9th. Ruth swallowed. I'm the one who wipes them. That's like 40% of my job. Decommission image redeploy. And on March 9th, I put his in the queue, and then She stopped. You just what? I took it home, Ruth said. I took it home, and I put it in my closet under a box of Christmas stuff, and I have not opened it one time in 4 months, and I don't know why I did it. I'm not a brave person. I got a C in ethics. He brought me soup, okay? When I had the flu, he was a 54-year-old man with a bad knee, and he drove to a Panera, and he brought me soup, and he left it at the front desk because he didn't want to make it weird. She was crying again, and she was furious about it. And they didn't do an autopsy, and I have his laptop in my closet next to a plastic reindeer. Maya reached across the table and took her hand. Ruth flinched and then didn't. Ruth, yeah, you're the bravest person I've met this year, and I've had a very interesting week. Ruth laughed wet and horrible. Please take it. Please take it. I want it out of my house. I keep thinking about it in there. I can't. I'm taking it. Okay? But I need one more thing from you, and then you're done. And I mean done. You go home, and you sleep, and this was never a conversation. What? Who else knows you have it? Ruth opened her mouth to say nobody, and then her whole face changed, and Maya watched a young woman's entire nervous system reorganize itself in real time. Oh my God, Ruth said. Say it. Tuesday. Tuesday somebody asked me about the March decommission log, just in the hall. Casual. Like, hey, weird thing, the audit's showing a serial number that never came back. Is that a you problem or a me problem? Her voice had gone flat and strange. And I said I'd look into it. And I forgot. I forgot completely because he said it like it was nothing. Who? He's not on any list you'd look at, Ruth said. He's not even full-time. He's the guy who does the audits. At 12:44, Maya wrote a 10th name on a napkin. At 12:52, she and Ghost walked Ruth Alvarez to her car, and Ghost put a hand on the roof and leaned down and said in a voice like a furnace, "You did a good thing tonight, and now you're going to do the easiest thing anybody's ever asked you to do. You're going to be boring. You're going to answer emails and complain about the parking and be so boring that God himself falls asleep. Can you be boring?" "I'm extremely boring," Ruth said. "It's my whole personality." "Then you're going to be fine." She drove away. Ghost watched the taillights and said without turning his head, "Silver Corolla, 2 rows back. Been there since before we walked out." "I know." "Engine's running." "I know." "He's been sitting in a running car in a Denny's parking lot for 20 minutes and hasn't gone inside." Ghost cracked his neck. "Maya, I'm going to say something and I want you to hear the whole thing before you get a look on your face." "Say it." "That's not a professional either." "No, Maya agreed. "It's a guy with a phone and an address, which means somebody's running this on a budget, which means somebody's running this without permission," Maya said, and the words came out of her mouth before she'd finished thinking them, and both of them went quiet. At 12:59, Maya Reynolds walked across a parking lot toward a silver Corolla, alone with her hands empty and visible, and she was smiling. The man inside the car saw her coming at about 40 feet. She watched him decide 4 separate things in 3 seconds. She watched him reach for the shifter, then not. Reach for his phone, then not. Roll the window down 2 inches, which was of all the available options, the stupidest. "Hi," Maya said. "I'm waiting for someone." "You're not." "Lady, you've been idling for 22 minutes in July with the AC on, and you never once looked at the door of the restaurant. People waiting for someone look at the door. It's compulsive. You can't stop yourself." She leaned down, friendly hands still visible. "You looked at that girl's car 9 times. The man's throat moved. "What's your name?" "I don't have to." "You don't." "You're right." Maya nodded. "Here's what's going to happen. In about 9 seconds, you're going to decide to drive away. And that's fine. That's a great decision. I fully support it. But before you do, I want you to take something with you." She smiled wider. "Tell whoever pays you that I know about the audit." The man stared at her. "Just that," Maya said. 6 words. "She knows about the audit. You don't have to understand it. He will." "You're insane," the man said. "I'm consistent. There's a difference, and honestly, it's mostly paperwork." He drove away. He drove away fast, which was the last mistake he made that night, because a man who drives away fast is a man who has been frightened. And a frightened man calls his boss immediately instead of at a scheduled time. At 1:04, Ghost said, "You just told them we have the laptop." "I told them I know about the audit." "Same thing." "No," Maya said. "The audit is a thing that lives at Atlas. If I know about the audit, I know about the log. If I know about the log, I have an inside source. And now everybody who touched that log is going to spend the weekend wondering if the person next to them is the leak." She got in the car. "I just made them turn around and look at each other. That's worth more than a laptop." Ghost was quiet for a block. Then he said, "You know what's funny? I forgot. I actually forgot what this was like." What was like standing next to you while you do that?" He shook his head. 11 years I've been putting keypads on the walls of dentists." At 2:20 in the morning, they opened Thomas Vance's laptop on Maya's kitchen table, and it asked for a password. "Well," Ghost said. At 2:21, Maya typed 1 word and hit enter, and it opened. Ghost stared at her. "His wife's name was Carol," Maya said. "He'd worked there 9 years. Guys like that use the wife." That is the single most depressing security law lecture I've ever received. You should hear the version I give to executives. 3 of them crime. The desktop had 400 files on it, arranged in absolutely no order whatsoever, which Maya found unbearably human. There was a folder called Taxes Do Not Open. There was a photo of a ding. There was a document titled Toast for Dana's Wedding, Final V6. And there was a folder called Meridian. At 2:26, Maya opened it, and at 2:41, she sat back in her chair and did not say anything for a very long time. Talk to me, Ghost said. The Meridian project isn't a security contract. It's a $500 million security contract. It's a $500 million security contract that Atlas won by $11 million over the second place bid, Maya said, in February. And Thomas Vance spent the last 6 weeks of his life trying to figure out how Atlas knew what the second place bid was. Ghost went very still. They knew the number, Maya said. Somebody at Atlas knew the competitor's number, and they came in under it, and Tom found it, and Tom did the worst possible thing a good man can do. He reported it. He reported it up, Maya said, on February 27th to his direct supervisor, because he was a company man and that's what the flowchart says. Who's his direct supervisor? Maya turned the laptop around. Ghost read the name. He read it twice. Gerald Whitlock, he said. Gerald Whitlock. And on March 4th, Tom Vance had a heart attack in a car at 2 a.m. on a road that doesn't go anywhere. The refrigerator hummed. Maya, Ghost said carefully, who was the second place bid? At 2:49, she scrolled and found it, and the room got smaller. Halberd Group, she read. Never heard of them. Neither had I. She kept scrolling. Private security, 8 years old, very quiet, very good at the kind of overseas work nobody writes press releases about. And they lost by 11 million. They lost by 11 million, Maya said. And a month later, the man who noticed was dead. And 4 months after that, 3 guys put a gun to my head and told me to quit. Ghost sat down. That's backwards, he said. Yes. Say it out loud so I know I'm not stupid. If Atlas cheated to win, Maya said slowly, then Halberd is the victim. And the victim doesn't send men to a woman's neighborhood to threaten her mother. The victim files a protest with the contracting officer and hires a very expensive lawyer. Unless, Maya said. At 2:53 in the morning, in a kitchen in Virginia, Maya Reynolds understood the whole thing at once, the way you understand a word in a language you haven't spoken since childhood. They didn't lose, she said. What? Halberd didn't lose. Halberd let Atlas win. She stood up so fast her chair went over. Ghost, look at the timeline. You don't leak your own number to your competitor to lose a contract. You leak it to lose a contract that you want somebody else to be holding when it goes wrong. Ghost's mouth opened slightly. Meridian is energy infrastructure in a region controlled by criminal networks, Maya said. It's the worst contract in the portfolio. It killed the last 3 companies that touched it. And if you're Halberd and you know it's a grave, you don't want to win it. You want your competitor to win it. And then you want it to fail so publicly, so bloodily, so catastrophically that Atlas never bids on anything ever again. And then in 2 years, the contract gets recompeted and there's exactly 1 company left in the room. Ghost put both hands flat on the table. That's not a fraud, he said. That's a demolition. That's a demolition, Maya agreed. Then why do they care about you? And Maya stopped. Because that was the seam. That was the one thread that didn't lie flat, and she had felt it snagging on something since the moment the pleasant man had said her mother's bedtime out loud on a sidewalk. They don't, she said slowly. They shouldn't. If the plan is for Atlas to fail, then I'm the best thing that ever happened to them. I'm a woman with a good resume walking into a slaughterhouse. They should be sending me flowers. Unless they think you'll win. Nobody thinks I'll win, Maya said. Nobody's ever thought that about me in my life. Ghost looked up at her. Somebody does, he said quietly. Somebody read your file and got scared enough to spend money. The clock in the kitchen ticked. Maya, Ghost said, who reads a sealed service jacket and gets scared. She didn't answer. She didn't answer because the answer had a shape and the shape had a face, and she was not ready to look at it at 3 in the morning in her own house. At 5:10 a.m., Maya Reynolds parked in front of a colonial house in McLean with a basketball hoop over the garage and a garden gnome that had fallen over, and she rang the doorbell. Gerald Whitlock opened the door in a bathrobe. He looked at her, he looked past her at the street. Then he did something that she thought about for a long time afterward. He closed his eyes and his shoulders came down about 2 inches, and he looked more than anything else relieved. "You called me 11 times, Maya said. "I did. You never left a message." "No." "Why?" Gerald Whitlock stood in his own doorway at 5 in the morning and said, "Because I've been trying to say it for 4 months, and every time I open my mouth, I hear my granddaughter's ringtone." Maya didn't move. "Her name's Sophie," he said. "She's 9. She has a specific ringtone. It's a frog. She picked it herself. It's the stupidest sound I've ever heard in my life." His voice was completely level and his eyes were not. "In March, a man called me from a number I didn't know and played that ringtone into the phone for 40 seconds and hung up. That's all." He didn't say a word. 40 seconds of a frog. Gerald, "Come in," he said. "Please come in. My wife's asleep. Please come in. I'm going to tell you all of it, and then I'm going to go to prison. And honest to God, Maya, honest to God, it'll be a relief." At 5:22, he told her. He told her that on February 27th, Thomas Vance had come into his office and closed the door and laid out the bid discrepancy on his desk, and that Gerald Whitlock had looked at it and felt his life end. "I didn't leak it," he said. "I want you to know that. I never touched that number. I found out the same way Tom did 3 weeks earlier, and I did nothing. And I've been telling myself for 5 months that there's a difference and there isn't. There isn't. Why did you do nothing?" "Because the man who leaked it had already come to see me." "Who?" Whitlock didn't answer that, not yet. He was building to it the way people do when they've rehearsed a confession so many times it has a structure. "He came to my office in January," Whitlock said. "No appointment. He sat down in my chair, and he told me that Atlas was going to win Meridian and that it was going to be the biggest thing in my career and that in 18 months I would be on the board. And I said, that's not how bids work. And he laughed at me. And then he told me my mortgage balance." Maya sat very still. "To the dollar," Whitlock said. "Then he told me my daughter's employer. Then he told me the name of the school Sophie goes to and the color of her backpack. And then he stood up and shook my hand and said congratulations on the win and walked out. And you never reported it." "I drafted the email," Whitlock said. "It's still in there. It's in my drafts folder. I've opened it 400 times. He laughed, and it was awful. "Do you know what the last thing I did before I didn't send it? Was I looked at a picture of her. That's it. That's the whole story of my integrity. 61 years, 34 of them at that company, and it ended because I looked at a photograph." Gerald. "And then Tom found it, and Tom brought it to me, and I looked that man in the face, that good, boring, decent man who brought soup to the interns, and I said, 'Let me handle it.'" The house was silent. "I said, 'Let me handle it, Maya.'" "What did you do?" "I told him to give me 48 hours. Whitlock's hands were shaking so hard he put them under the table. "And then I called the number back. The one with the frog, and I said there's a problem. And a man said, 'What kind of problem?' And I said, 'One of my people found the discrepancy.'" He stopped. "Say the rest," Maya said. "I said his name," Whitlock whispered. "I said Tom's name out loud into a phone to a man I had never met because I wanted somebody else to make it stop. And 5 days later, Tom was dead in a car on a road that doesn't go anywhere. And I stood at his funeral next to his wife, and she said, 'Gerald, thank you for coming. He always said you were a good boss.'" Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Both of them froze. It was nothing. It was a house at 5:30 in the morning. But Maya watched a 61-year-old executive nearly come apart at the sound of his own home settling, and she understood that Gerald Whitlock had not slept a full night since March. "Who is he?" Maya said. "You'll want to sit down." "I am sitting down." "You'll want to be sitting down differently." At 5:41 in the morning, Gerald Whitlock said a name. And Maya Reynolds, who had been shot at on 4 continents, who had once spent 9 hours in a culvert with a broken hand, who had not flinched when a stranger put a gun against the back of her skull, on a Tuesday evening in July, felt the floor of the world tilt about 6 degrees to the left. "Say it again," she said. "Arthur Kessler." "Say it again." "Maya, say the whole thing." "Arthur Kessler," Whitlock said. "Founder and managing partner, Halberd Group. Retired Navy captain, very charming. Very. I know what he is." Whitlock stopped. He looked at her, and for the first time all morning, he wasn't the one who was afraid. You know him, he said. Maya didn't answer. Maya, you know him. He signed my orders, she said. At 5:44, in a kitchen in McLean, Virginia, with the sun not up yet, in a garden gnome lying face down outside, Maya Reynolds heard herself say something she had not said out loud in 11 years. He signed the orders for a mission in 2014, she said. He wasn't there. He was never there. He was in a room with a screen 1,100 miles away, and he approved a package that 4 people went out on and 2 people came back from. Her voice was doing something strange, going flat and clean, like a table being wiped. And when it was over, there was a review. And in the review, Captain Arthur Kessler sat at the end of a very long table and said that the ground element had exceeded the parameters of the authorization. The ground element, Whitlock repeated. That's me, Maya said. The ground element is me. What actually happened? It doesn't matter. Maya, it doesn't matter, she said, because I had one thing that made it matter, and it was a recording, and I gave it to the investigation, and the investigation concluded that no fault could be assigned, which is a sentence they invented specifically so that nobody has to say the words, he lied. She looked up. Arthur Kessler retired 18 months later with a full pension and a plaque. And Miguel Rios has a bench with his name on it outside a school in San Diego, and his son is 13 now, and I have never been able to look at that bench. Gerald Whitlock stared at her. He knows your file, he said slowly, because he wrote half of it. He knows my file, Maya said, because he wrote half of it. Oh my God. He's not afraid of the seal, Gerald. What? That's what I couldn't understand. Maya stood up. She stood up so suddenly that Whitlock jerked back. For 2 days I've been trying to figure out why a man running a demolition would spend money on a woman who's walking into his trap for free. And I had it backwards. He's not afraid of what I can do to the contract. Then what? He's afraid of what I still have, Maya said. The refrigerator in Gerald Whitlock's kitchen hummed. Do you? He asked. Still have it. At 5:50 in the morning, Maya Reynolds said no. And then she said, but he doesn't know that. At 8 a.m., she was back in her own kitchen and there were 3 strangers in it. This is Sparrow, Ghost said. Priya, said a small woman of about 40 who was eating Maya's cereal directly out of the box. Sparrow was a 19-year-old's idea and he won't let it go. You picked it. I was 19. She stuck out a hand. You're shorter than the story. There's a story. Ma'am, there's a musical. And this, Ghost said, is Deacon. The man by the window was 60 if he was a day, and he had not said one word, and he had been looking at the street since he arrived. Cole, he said. He talks about twice a month, Priya said. You've used up July. Maya looked at the 3 of them standing in her kitchen. Ghost, who installed keypads for dentists. Priya, who apparently now had a podcast about knitting, which she had mentioned twice already. Cole, who was 60. You all quit things to be here, she said. Nobody answered. I need to say something, Maya said, and then we'll never talk about it again. 11 years ago, I stopped answering my phone, not for a week, for 11 years, and every single one of you kept the number anyway. Ma'am, Priya said, we're not here because you called. Then why? We're here because you finally let us, she said, and went back to eating cereal out of the box like she hadn't just taken the top of Maya's head off. At 8:47, Maya laid out the whole thing. Kessler, Halberd, the bid, Vance, Whitlock, the frog ringtone, all of it. When she finished, Cole spoke for the second time in July. He's going to kill you over there, he said. Probably. Not probably. Definitely. That's the design. He turned from the window. You don't demolish a contract with paperwork. You demolish it with a photograph of a dead American on the front page. And the best possible dead American, the one that sells, is a woman. A veteran, a hero. He said the last word like it tasted bad. He's not trying to stop you from going. He's trying to make you go angry. The kitchen went absolutely silent. Say that again, Maya said. The gun to your head, Cole said, the mother's name. The 24 hours, ma'am, that's not intimidation. Intimidation would have worked on somebody else. He read your file. He knows exactly what happens when you tell Maya Reynolds she has 24 hours to quit. Priya set the cereal down. Oh, she said quietly. Oh, that's ugly. He didn't send those men to make her stop, Ghost said, and his voice had gone strange. He sent them to make sure she wouldn't. Maya stood in her own kitchen and felt something cold move through her, all the way from her scalp to her heels, and it was the first time in 3 days she had been afraid. He's steering me, she said. He's been steering you since February, Cole said. The job offer. Did you apply for it? Maya opened her mouth. She closed it. No, she said. A recruiter called me? Nobody said anything. A recruiter called me, Maya said again, and her voice cracked down the middle for the first time in 11 years, and told me they needed somebody who understood hostile environments, and I said no. I said no twice, Ghost. And then he sent me an email that said, "We think you're the only person alive who can make this work." And I read it about 40 times, and I said yes. Priya closed her eyes. He knew, Maya said. He knew exactly what to say to me. He knew because he watched me sit at a table for 6 hours in 2014 and listened to a room full of men explain that I had exceeded the parameters, and he watched what it did to my face, and he wrote it down. Maya, Ghost said, he's not recruiting me into a job, she said. He's recruiting me into a headline. At 11:15 that morning, the pleasant voice called for the third time. She let it ring twice. Then she put it on speaker and set it on the table, and 4 people looked at it. You've had your weekend, the voice said. It's Saturday. Have you called Atlas? I've been busy. Doing what? Reading, Maya said. There was a pause. It was a very small pause. But Priya's head came up and Ghost's eyes went to Maya, and everybody in that kitchen heard it, because a man reading from a script does not pause. Reading what the voice said. You know what I've decided, Maya said. I've decided I feel sorry for you. Excuse me? He's going to burn you, Maya said, when this is over. You understand that, right? You put your face in front of mine on a public street with no mask in a residential neighborhood at 6:20 in the evening. You said my mother's name out loud where a Ring doorbell could hear it. Whose idea was that? Was that yours? Silence. It wasn't yours, Maya said. It was in the script, because he needed it said out loud in exactly those words in exactly that order. And he needed a face attaching to it that wasn't his. Lady, you have no... What's your name? You think I'm gonna... Your name is not the point, Maya said, abutting. The point is that he knows it. And when a body has to exist for the story to work, it doesn't have to be mine. She leaned toward the phone. It just has to be somebody's. The line stayed open. For 9 full seconds, the line stayed open, and there was breathing on it, and nobody in Maya's kitchen moved. You're trying to turn me, the voice said finally, and there was something new in it, something young. I'm trying to tell you the truth. What you do with it is your business. He'd never... Say his name, Maya said. Nothing. Say his name and I'll know you're a partner. Refuse and I'll know you're a tool. She waited. Say his name. The call ended. Priya let out a breath. That poor kid. He put a gun to my head. Yeah, she said, and he's about 26 and he just found out what he is. At 4:30 that afternoon, Maya Reynolds drove to a school in Falls Church and sat in the parking lot for 11 minutes, and then didn't go in, and then did. Her mother was in the gymnasium with a suitcase. I told you to go to Deb's. I did go to Deb's, Eleanor Reynolds said, for 19 hours. Do you know what Deb has done to that spare room? Mom. There's a wallpaper border, Maya, of geese. Mom. Sit down, Eleanor said. Maya sat down on a folding chair in a school gymnasium next to her 73-year-old mother and a rolling suitcase. I want to tell you something, Eleanor said, and then you can go do whatever it is you're not telling me about. Mom, 1989, Eleanor said. You were 4. Your father and I had a very bad year. A very bad year. And there was a night when I sat in the car in the driveway for 2 hours because I could not make myself go into my own house. She was looking straight ahead, and you came out, 4 years old in the dark in your nightgown. You opened the car door. You climbed in my lap. And do you know what you said? Maya didn't trust her voice. You said, it's okay, I'll go first. Eleanor turned and looked at her daughter. 4 years old, you didn't know what was wrong. You didn't know what was in the house. You just knew I couldn't go in, so you were going to go in ahead of me. The gymnasium clock buzzed. I've had 37 years to think about that, Eleanor said. And I've decided it's the worst thing about you, and it's the best thing about you, and there's no separating them, and God help me, I don't want to. She reached over and took her daughter's hand. So you go first. You go do the thing you are not telling me about. And I'll be right behind you, and I'm taking my own pillow. Maya Reynolds sat in a folding chair and cried for about 4 seconds, which was by her count the longest she had cried since 2014. There she is, Eleanor said softly. Hi, baby. At 9 p.m. in a hangar outside Manassas, Maya stood with a bag at her feet and 3 people behind her, and Gerald Whitlock in front of her, holding a briefcase like it was a live animal. Everything's in here, Whitlock said. The drafts, the number, the dates, my statement, all of it signed, notarized 4 copies. If I don't come back from Gerald, let me finish. If I don't come back, you send it. If you don't come back, my lawyer sends it. If neither of us comes back, Ruth Alvarez sends it. And yes, I know I'm sorry, I asked her. And she said yes so fast it made me sick. He was crying and he didn't seem to know it. That girl said yes in 1 second, Maya. 1 second. And I took 4 months. You're here now. That's not the same thing. No, Maya agreed. It's not, but it's not nothing, and I'm not going to lie to you at 9 o'clock at night in a hangar. Gerald Whitlock nodded. He's going to be there, he said. Kessler. He's on the ground at Meridian as an observer. Halberd holds the subcontract for the perimeter. Maya's head came up very slowly. Say that again. Halberd holds the perimeter subcontract, Whitlock said. They lost the prime and took the sub. Nobody thought anything of it. It's a nothing contract. It's fences and cameras. It's $4 million. Gerald, Maya's voice had gone very quiet. The company that wants Atlas to fail, Bill is being paid by Atlas to guard the fence. Whitlock's mouth opened. Oh, he said. Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. Behind her, Cole spoke for the 3rd time in July. Ma'am, he said, the enemy's inside the wire and they've got a key and we're the ones who gave it to them. At 9:52 p.m., her phone rang. Yet the burner, not the work cell, her personal phone, the one with 11 contacts in it, the one her mother called. Unknown number. Maya looked at it for a long moment. Then she answered and she didn't say anything, and the man on the other end waited exactly as long as she did, which told her everything because he had always been patient, and patience had always been the worst thing about him. Hello, Lieutenant, Arthur Kessler said. Maya Reynolds did not say hello back. She stood in a hangar outside Manassas at 9:52 at night with a bag at her feet and 3 people behind her, and she listened to Arthur Kessler breathe, and she let the silence go on until it stopped being silence and started being a weapon. He broke first, by half a second, but he broke first. You're still doing that, Kessler said, and there was a smile in it. God, I'd forgotten. You'd sit in a briefing and not say a word until somebody else filled the room, and then you'd take whatever they said and build a house out of it. Do you know what we used to call it? No. Neither do I. I made that up just now to see if you'd bite. He laughed warm and easy, a man laughing in a comfortable chair. You didn't. Good, you're not rusty. What do you want, Arthur? Captain. You're retired. So are you, Lieutenant. Then we're 2 civilians on a phone, Maya said, and one of us called the other at 10 o'clock at night, so let's not pretend either of us is confused about who wants something. Behind her, Ghost had gone completely still. Priya had her hand over her mouth. Cole had not moved at all, which was somehow worse. I'm calling, Kessler said, because I want to be the one who tells you. Not a lawyer, not some functionary, me. Tells me what? That I'm sorry about the men on the street. Maya's hand tightened on the phone. That was not authorized, Kessler said. That was a contractor exercising initiative. An initiative is the most expensive thing in the world, and I've addressed it. It won't happen again. Your mother is not in danger and was never in danger, and I want you to hear that from me directly. That's a beautiful sentence. It's a true one. It's a beautiful sentence, Maya repeated. And you wrote it and you're proud of it, and you rehearsed it in a car. The pause lasted a full 1.5 seconds. You know what I always liked about you, Kessler said. Nothing. I never liked anything about you. That's not an insult, Maya. That's the highest compliment I have. I've spent 40 years around men I liked. Every one of them was useless. Say what you called to say. I called to say, don't get on that plane. At 9:55, Maya Reynolds started laughing. It was not a performance. That was the thing. It came up out of her before she could stop it, real and loud, and cracked in the middle, and it echoed off the metal walls of that hangar, and Priya's eyebrows went up to her hairline. "What?" Kessler said. Maya said. "You are so bad at this." "I'm sorry. You're bad at this. It's actually amazing to me. You sat behind a screen for 26 years and told men where to go, and you got so used to them going that you forgot how it works." She was still laughing. "Arthur, you just told me not to get on the plane. Do you understand what that does? Enlighten me. It puts me on the plane." "Maya, you had it," she said. "You had it, and you couldn't leave it alone. You spent 4 months building a machine that was designed to make me furious enough to walk into your trap. And it was working beautifully, and then at the last possible second, you couldn't resist calling me to enjoy it." Her voice went hard. "You wanted to hear it. That's the whole reason for this call. You wanted to be on the phone when I told you no, because that's the part you like." The line was quiet. "That's not true," Kessler said. "Say something that isn't a sentence you wrote in advance." "Maya, say one thing she said, one single thing that isn't from the version of this call you practiced." At 9:57 p.m., Arthur Kessler said, "Rios shouldn't have been on that roof," and the hangar tilted. Maya heard herself make a sound, a small one. She hated it instantly and forever. "There it is," Kessler said, and his voice had changed completely, all the warmth gone out of it, like a light going off in a house. "That's the thing you want. That's the only thing you've wanted for 11 years. You want me to say it out loud. And I just did, and here's the beautiful part, Lieutenant. You can't do anything with it. There's no recording, there's no witness. There's a woman in a hangar and a man in a chair, and tomorrow I'll say I never made this call, and one of us has a reputation." Maya could not speak. "You gave the recording to the investigation," Kessler said, "in 2014. You handed it over like a good sailor because you thought the system was a machine that eats the truth and produces justice. And it ate the truth, Maya. That's all it did. It ate it." "Arthur, do you know why I brought you in?" "Yes." "No, you don't. You think you do. You think I want a body on a front page. That's what your friend Cole told Chow, isn't it? 60-year-old man doesn't talk much, stands by the window." At 9:58, 4 people in a hangar outside Manassas stopped breathing at the same time. Cole's head turned, very slowly. "Say hello, Chief," Kessler said. Nobody moved. "Oh, don't do that," Kessler said. "Don't do the silence thing. Maya, it's undignified in a group. I'm not in the room. I don't have a camera in your hangar. I have something much cheaper and much better." A pause perfectly timed. "I have a list of everyone who would come if you called." At 9:59, Priya said out loud, "Oh, you son of a..." "Hello, Sparrow." Priya's face went white. 19 years old, Kessler said. "You picked that yourself, didn't you? God, I love that." "Arthur," Maya's voice was steel now. "That's enough." "It's not, though. That's the problem." He sighed. "Maya, listen to me. You think this is a trap. It's not a trap. It's an offer, and I've made it 3 times now, and you keep hearing it as a threat because that's the only language you've ever been fluent in." "What offer?" "Don't get on the plane," Kessler said. "Stay. Take the pension, take the house, take the mother, take the 11 years you've already wasted and spend the next 11 on something that isn't this. Nobody dies. Not you, not Ghost, not Sparrow, not the girl with the laptop." At 10 p.m., Maya Reynolds said, "Say her name." "Who's..." "You just said the girl with the laptop. Say her name." Silence. "You don't know it," Maya said. "I have 1,100 employees. You don't know her name." Maya's voice was rising and she let it. "You know Ghost. You know Priya. You know Cole. You know my mother's bedtime. You know the color of Sophie Whitlock's backpack. You built an entire architecture out of knowing people's names. Arthur, it's the only weapon you have, and you don't know Ruth Alvarez's name. And that means you don't know she has the laptop, and that means somebody told you there was a laptop, but not who took it." She heard it. She heard him inhale. "That's the first true thing you've done all night," Maya said. "You just breathed wrong." The call ended. At 10:01, nobody in that hangar said anything for 11 seconds. Then Priya sat down on a crate and put her face in her hands and said into her palms, "That man knows my call sign." Yeah, that man knows my call sign. Maya and I have a 9-year-old, and I have a podcast about knitting. I know. I have a podcast about knitting. Priya. I'm not scared, Priya said, and her voice cracked. That's the part I want you to understand. I'm not scared. I'm insulted. He said it like it was cute. Ghost hadn't moved. He was looking at the phone on the crate like it might get up. Maya, he said. Yeah. He said Cole's rank. I heard. He said chief. Ghost turned. Cole hasn't used that in 9 years. It's not on his LinkedIn. He doesn't have a LinkedIn. He doesn't have a Facebook. The man pays cash for gas. Everybody looked at Cole. Cole looked back, and then Cole Deacon, who spoke twice a month, said the longest sentence anybody in that hangar had ever heard him say. He's not guessing, Cole said. He's reading it, and there's exactly one place in the world where my rank, her call sign, and Okonkwo's mortgage all live on the same page. And it's not the internet, and it's not a private investigator, and it isn't a leak from Atlas HR. He looked at Maya. It's the 2014 investigation file. All of us are in it. We were witnesses. The hangar hummed. That file is sealed, Ghost said. Yes. That file is sealed, Cole. Yes. So who unsealed it? At 10:04 p.m., Maya Reynolds understood something that she would spend the next 36 hours trying to unknow. Nobody unsealed it, she said. They all turned. Nobody unsealed it because it never got sealed, because a sealed file has to be filed first. Her voice was very quiet. Arthur Kessler was the convening authority's advisor. He didn't just testify, he handled the exhibits. Priya's head came up. Maya, Ghost said slowly. Maya, what are you saying? I'm saying I gave the recording to the investigation, Maya said. And I've spent 11 years believing the investigation heard it and decided it didn't matter. She looked up and her eyes were terrible. But I never confirmed it. I gave it to a man in a hallway. He said, I'll walk it in. And I said, thank you, sir. Nobody breathed. It was Kessler, Priya whispered. It was Kessler. Maya. 11 years, Maya said, and her voice was doing something none of them had ever heard. 11 years I've hated a system for eating the truth. 11 years I didn't go to the plaque because I couldn't look at Rios's kid knowing the world had heard what happened to his father and shrugged. She stopped. She put a hand on the crate. The world never heard it, she said. At 10:06, Ghost said, where's the recording now? I don't know. Maya. I don't know, she said. I told you I don't have it. That's the truth. I handed it to him in a hallway in 2014, and I never saw it again, and I never asked because asking would have meant I thought he'd lie, and he was a captain, and I was 29. Then it's destroyed, Ghost said. No. Maya, of course it's... No, Maya said, and something was coming up in her, something she hadn't felt in over a decade, and it was not grief. Ghost, think about tonight. He called me at 10 o'clock at night, 2 hours before I get on a plane. Why, to gloat. He doesn't gloat, he performs. There's a difference. She was moving now, pacing, and the words were coming faster. He told me Rio shouldn't have been on that roof, voluntarily, unprompted. He gave me the only thing I've wanted for 11 years for free over an unrecorded line. Because he knew you couldn't use it. Because he needed to know if I'd recorded it. At 10:07 p.m., Priya said, oh my God. He wasn't taunting me, Maya said. He was testing me. He said the one sentence that would make any sane person hit record, and then he waited to see what I did with it, and I did nothing, and now he knows. She turned. Ghost, he called to find out whether I still tape things. Why would he care? Because if I stopped taping things, Maya said, then the recording from 2014 was the only one. And a man doesn't destroy the only copy of something, Maya said. He keeps it. It's the most dangerous object in his life. And he keeps it because the day somebody comes for him, it's the only leash he's got on the people who would be standing next to him. Cole spoke for the 5th time in July. Ma'am, he said, insurance. Insurance? Maya agreed. Where does a man like that keep insurance? At 10:09 p.m., Maya Reynolds looked up. Close to him, she said. How close? Arthur Kessler is going to be standing on a compound 4,000 miles from here on Thursday, Maya said. As an observer on a subcontract he doesn't need in a country where he has no reason to be for a fence job worth $4 million to a man with 1,100 employees. Nobody said anything. Why is he there? Maya said. Somebody tell me why he's there. He's 67. He's rich. He's got a house in Naples with a boat behind it. Why is Arthur Kessler personally getting on a plane to stand in the worst place on earth? Ghost's mouth opened. He's not there to watch you die, he said slowly. No, he's there because the thing he can't leave anywhere is there. He's there, Maya said, because for 4 months he's been building a machine to destroy a company, and a woman and a man with a machine like that does not leave his insurance in a safe deposit box in Virginia where a subpoena can reach it. He carries it, physically, in a place with no American jurisdiction, no warrants, no discovery, and 100 armed men on his payroll who are all standing on a fence line he controls. At 10:11 p.m., the hangar was so quiet they could hear the mechanic's radio 2 buildings over. Maya, Ghost said carefully, say the thing you're about to say. I'm not going to Meridian to save a contract, Maya said. Maya, I don't care about the contract. I never cared about the contract. $500 million of somebody else's money and a fence around somebody else's pipeline. She looked at the 3 of them. I'm going because Arthur Kessler is going to be standing within 400 meters of the only proof that Miguel Rios died because of a decision a man made in a room and then lied about at a table and then buried in a hallway. Priya stood up. You said he's steering you, she said. You said he built the whole thing to make you go angry. He did. So you're going anyway. Yes. Maya, that's exactly what he... Priya. Maya turned. Do you know what the difference is between being steered and going no? Knowing, Maya said, that's the whole difference. That's all of it. A man steers you by making you think it was your idea. The second you know it was his, you're not being steered anymore. You're just going, and now you know where the road is, and he doesn't know, you know. Cole made a sound. Everybody looked at him. It took a moment to identify. Cole Deacon was laughing. Ma'am, he said. He read your file. He knows what you do when somebody threatens your mother. He knows what you do when somebody says 24 hours. He wiped his eye with a thumb. But that file stops in 2014. Yeah. That file doesn't have the last 11 years in it, Cole said. He doesn't know what you do when somebody tells you the truth about Rios and thinks it's free. At 10:14 p.m., Maya Reynolds picked up her bag. Wheels up in 40 minutes, she said. Ghost, call Ruth. Tell her the word is reindeer. She'll know. What's the word for if she hears it? Maya said. She sends everything to everyone. At 6:40 the next evening, local time, Maya Reynolds stood in a room with 11 exhausted people and understood within 90 seconds that the Meridian site security team had already lost. Not the fight. The fight hadn't started. They'd lost the argument with themselves. Sit down, she said. Nobody sat down. That was the first thing, a room full of security professionals, and not one of them wanted to be the first person to obey a stranger. Okay, Maya said. Stand. She let it sit. 11 seconds, 12. A man in the back shifted his weight, and it was the exact same sound the man with the gun had made on a sidewalk in Virginia, and Maya thought everybody in the world is uncomfortable in exactly the same way. My name's Maya Reynolds, she said. I'm your new director. I'm the 3rd one this year. The first one quit, and the second one died, and I understand that from where you're standing, that's not a resume, that's a countdown. Somebody exhaled sharply, almost a laugh. Here's what I'm not going to do, Maya said. I'm not going to tell you I'm different. Everybody who's ever stood where I'm standing told you they were different. So I'm going to skip that, and instead, I'm going to tell you 3 true things, and then you can decide. The room was watching her now. 1. The perimeter is subcontracted to Halberd Group. Halberd wants this site to fail. She let that land like a brick through a window. Thomas Vance did not have a heart attack. 3. There is a man arriving on this compound on Thursday named Arthur Kessler who intends for at least one of the people in this room to die on camera. At 6:44 p.m., a woman near the door said, Are you allowed to say that? No. Then why did you? Because you already knew, Maya said. And you've been carrying it around alone for 4 months, and I'm not going to make you carry it alone for 1 more hour. Nobody moved. Then from the back, a man's voice, thick and unsteady. I told Tom not to go. The room turned. He was maybe 55, a night shift supervisor named Emeka Boateng. And he had the face of a man who had said something out loud that he'd been saying in his head since March. March 4th, he said. He came to the gate at 11:40 at night. He was going to town. I said, Sir, you can't go to town at 11:40. He said to Emeka, I have to see a man about a number. Emeka's jaw was working. I said, take an escort. He said no. He said, if I take an escort, I have to write it in the log. Silence. He didn't want it in the log, Emeka said. Emeka. I opened the gate, he said. I opened the gate for him, and I've opened that gate 9,000 times in 6 years, and that's the one I think about. Maya crossed the room. She did not touch him because he was not a man who wanted to be touched. Who was he going to see, she said. I don't know. Emeka. I don't know, he said, but there was a car. At 6:47 p.m., the room stopped being a room and became something else. What car, Maya said. A car waiting on the road, Emeka said. Outside the wire, lights off. It had been there 20 minutes. I saw it on camera 4. He looked up, and when Mr. Vance drove out, it followed him. And I wrote it in the log, ma'am. I wrote it down, because that's my job. I write things in the log. Maya's voice was very careful now. Emeka, where's the log? Gone. Gone how? Gone the way things go, Emeka said. The perimeter contractor manages the camera archive and the gate log. It's in their scope. It's in the contract. Page 40 of the contract, ma'am, I read it. I read it 11 times. He was shaking. On March 12th, there was a system fault and 8 days of archive were lost, and they filed a report, and everybody signed it, and I signed it too. Because what am I going to do, ma'am? What am I supposed to do? I have 2 kids at university. At 6:49 p.m., Maya Reynolds turned around and looked at the 11 people in that room, and something happened in her chest that was not anger. It was worse than anger. It was recognition. You all signed it, she said. Nobody answered. Every one of you. Nobody answered. Look at me, Maya said. Look at me. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm the last person on this earth with the standing to yell at anybody about signing something they knew was a lie. The woman by the door said, What did you sign? And Maya Reynolds stood in a briefing room 4,000 miles from home and said out loud to 11 strangers the things she had never said to anyone. In 2014, I sat at a table for 6 hours, she said, and a man told a room that my team exceeded its authorization. And I had proof he was lying, and when they asked me if I had anything to add, I said, no, sir. The room was silent. I said, no, sir, Maya said, because I'd already handed the proof to a man in a hallway, and I trusted him to walk it in, and I've spent 11 years telling myself that was integrity. She swallowed. It wasn't. It was obedience wearing integrity's coat. And a man named Miguel Rios has a bench with his name on it because of a decision that never got read out loud, and I have never been able to look at that bench. Emeka Boateng was crying openly now. So no, Maya said, I'm not going to yell at you for signing. I'm going to do something worse. What? Said the woman by the door. I'm going to ask you to unsign it. At 6:52 p.m., a young man in the second row said, how? And that was the moment. That was the exact moment. Maya felt it go through the room like a current because he hadn't said you can't, or that's impossible, or what does that even mean? He'd said how. What's your name? Maya said. Toby. Toby, do you back up the camera archive? No, ma'am, that's Halbert's. That's not what I asked. I asked if you back it up. Toby's mouth closed. 11 people looked at him. Toby, Maya said gently, it's a very small question. I have a hard drive, Toby said. The room made a sound. I have a hard drive, he said again faster now, defensive, terrified, because in 2023 the archive glitched and I lost 2 weeks of my own shift footage and I got written up for it and it wasn't my fault and I said never again and I bought a drive with my own money and I mirror the camera 4 and camera 9 feeds every night at 2 a.m. because those are my cameras, ma'am. Those are the ones I'm responsible for. And if something goes wrong on my cameras, it's my name on the... Toby. Ma'am. Camera 4, Maya said. March 4th, 11:40 at night. At 6:54 p.m., Toby Adeyemi went the color of paper. Oh, he said. Nobody in that room breathed. Oh, gosh, Toby said. Do you have it? I never looked, he whispered. It's a 2 terabyte drive in a drawer. It just writes. I've never opened a single file. Ma'am, I don't watch it. It's insurance. It's for if I get written up. Toby, it's in my room, he said. It's in a drawer under my socks. It's been in a drawer under my socks since March. At 6:55 p.m., Maya Reynolds felt the entire architecture of Arthur Kessler's 4-month machine develop a hairline crack, and it made a sound in her head like ice on a lake. Nobody moves, she said. The room froze. Nobody goes to that room. Nobody says the word drive. Nobody looks at Toby. Toby, look at me. You are going to walk out of here and go to dinner and eat a full meal and complain about the food. Ma'am, I can't eat. You're going to eat, Maya said, because 11 people just watched your face, and if one of the 11 people in this room works for Halberd, the only thing standing between you and a car, with its lights off, is whether you looked scared at dinner. At 6:56 p.m., a very tall man in the back of the room said quietly, one of us does. Everybody turned. What? Maya said. One of us does, he said. Work for them. Nobody breathed. How do you know that? Maya said. Because they offered me. The man had it. At 6:57 p.m., Maya Reynolds walked to the back of a briefing room and stood in front of a man she had known for 11 minutes. Say it all, she said. In April. His name was Dmitry Sokolov, and he was 44, and he had a wedding ring he kept turning. A man from the perimeter contractor. He bought me a drink in the canteen. Very friendly. He said we should share information. We're all on the same team. And I said, sure. And then 2 weeks later, he asked what the new director's arrival schedule would be. And I said, we don't have a new director. And he said, you will. Maya said, April. I signed in June. Yes, Dmitry said. The room went absolutely still. He asked about my arrival schedule, Maya said slowly, 2 months before I existed. Yes. Dmitry. Maya's voice had gone very soft. What did you tell him? Nothing, Dmitry said. That's what I want you to understand. I told him nothing, and then I went back to my room and I sat on my bed for 2 hours, and then I did the coward thing. What's the coward thing? I said nothing to anybody, Dmitry said. For 3 months, because who do I report it to, ma'am? The perimeter contractor is the security. There's no one above them here. The only people above them are in Virginia, and Mr. Vance was in Virginia, and Mr. Vance is dead. At 6:59 p.m., Maya Reynolds said, thank you. Dmitry blinked. Say again. Thank you, Maya said. You just told me the most important thing anybody's told me in 4 days, and you told it in front of 10 witnesses when you had every reason to keep sitting on it, and I want you to know that I know what that cost. Dmitry Sokolov's face did something complicated. That's it, he said. You're not angry. Dmitry, in about 6 seconds, you're going to figure out why I'm not angry, and then you're going to wish I was. He frowned, and then slowly his whole body changed. Oh, he said, there it is. They know you're here. They've known since April, Maya said. They didn't ask about my schedule because they wanted to know when I'd arrive. They asked because they wanted somebody in this room to remember 4 months later that they asked. Nobody said anything. He's not hiding, Maya said. That's what I've been getting wrong all week. Everybody keeps telling me Kessler's careful. He's not careful. He's loud. He wants me to know. He put a man's face in front of mine on a public street. He said my mother's name where a doorbell could hear it. He called my personal phone last night and used my call signs like a party trick. Why? Said the woman by the door. Because a demolition needs a story, Maya said, and a story needs a villain, and the villain he's building isn't him. At 7:02 p.m., Emeka Boateng said, it's you. The room turned. Say that again, Maya said. It's you, Emeka said. Ma'am, listen to me. Listen to what you just said out loud in this room. Emeka, you just told 11 people that the perimeter contractor is the enemy, he said. You told us Mr. Vance was murdered. You told us a man is coming Thursday who wants one of us dead. You said all of it in a room with no lawyer, no evidence, no authority. Maya went very still. And on Friday, Emeka said, his voice rising, when something terrible happens on this compound, they will find 11 witnesses who will all say the same thing under oath, that the new director arrived from America, that within 90 seconds she accused the contractor of murder, that she was, ma'am, forgive me, that she was not well, that she had a history, that she had been in an incident in 2014 where a review found she exceeded her parameters. The room did not make a sound. You just wrote his report for him, Emeka said. At 7:04 p.m. in a briefing room in a compound 4,000 miles from a quiet street in Virginia. Maya Reynolds smiled. It was not a nice smile. Emeka, she said, how long have you been holding that? Since you started talking. And you said it anyway, in front of everybody, to your new boss, on day one. Emeka's chin came up. Yes. Good, Maya said, because you're right. 11 people stared at her. You're completely right, Maya said. Everything I said in this room in the last 20 minutes is admissible against me and useless for me. If I'd wanted to be safe, I'd have said none of it. If I'd wanted to be smart, I'd have said it to 2 people I'd vetted. Then why? Because he's counting on me being smart, Maya said. Nobody moved. He's read the file, Maya said. The file says Reynolds is careful. The file says Reynolds runs a tight compartment. The file says Reynolds trusts 3 people and nobody else, and Arthur Kessler knows the names of all 3 because he's got them in a folder. She looked around the room. So his entire plan assumes that when I got here, I do exactly what I've done for 11 years. Hold it close. Trust nobody. Work alone. Because a woman working alone can be made into anything you want after she's dead. Emeka's mouth opened. But you can't do that to 12, Maya said. At 7:06 p.m., something happened in that room that Maya had not planned and did not expect and did not deserve. Toby Adeyemi stood up. I'll get the drive, he said. Toby, sit down. No, ma'am. Toby, you said one of us might work for them, Toby said, and his voice was shaking so badly it barely held together. And you said, don't look at me, and everybody looked at me anyway, and that means it's already too late, and I'm not going to sit in a room and eat dinner while a drive with a dead man on it sits under my socks. Maya opened her mouth. Dmitry Sokolov stood up. I'll walk with him, he said. Dmitry, ma'am, in April, a man bought me a drink, and I said nothing for 3 months. Dmitry was turning his wedding ring. I would like to do a thing. Please, let me do a thing. Emeka Boateng stood up. I opened the gate, he said. At 7:07 p.m., 11 people stood up in a briefing room, and Maya Reynolds, former Navy SEAL who had not cried at a plaque, who had not cried at a review, who had cried for 4 seconds in a school gymnasium next to a rolling suitcase, had to turn around and look at a wall. Ma'am, Emeka said, give me a second. Ma'am. Emeka, I said, give me a second. They gave her a second. When she turned back around, her face was a piece of granite, and her voice was steady, and only Ghost, standing in the doorway where he'd been standing for the last 20 minutes without anybody noticing, could see what it was costing. Nobody's getting the drive tonight, Maya said. Sit down, all of you. But sit down. They sat. Toby, if that drive has what we think it has, it's worth exactly one thing, and it's not evidence. It's a trigger. The second it moves, they know. So it doesn't move until it's the last thing that has to happen, and everything else is already in place. What everything else? Said the woman by the door. Maya looked at her. What's your name? Inez. Inez, what do you do here? Access control. So you know who's on this compound? To the badge. How many Halber personnel are inside the wire right now? At 7:09 p.m., Inez Duarte said 41. How many are supposed to be? Inez's face went strange. Inez. 22, she said. The room made a noise. Say that again, Maya said. 22, Inez said. The perimeter contract authorizes 22 personnel inside the wire. 41 badged in over the last 9 days. She was already scrolling on her tablet, and her hands were unsteady. Ma'am, I flagged this. I flagged this on Monday. I sent it to the contractor's own compliance officer. Because that's the process. That's literally the process. The perimeter contractor audits their own head count. What did they say? They said it was a rotation overlap. 19 extra men, Cole said from the doorway. Everybody jumped. Nobody had heard him come in. Nobody had heard him breathing. He'd been there the whole time. 19 extra men, Cole said again, 9 days before an observer visit on a compound where the observer's own company controls the gates, the cameras, the log, and the headcount audit. Maya's voice was very quiet. Inez, she said, when's the next Halberd rotation flight? Thursday. What time? 1400. And Kessler lands when Inez Duarte looked up from her tablet and her face had gone the color of ash. Ma'am, she said, Mr. Kessler doesn't land Thursday. At 7:11 p.m. the room stopped. What? Maya said. He's not on the Thursday manifest. Inez turned the tablet around and her hand was shaking so badly the screen blurred. I pulled every manifest when you walked in because that's my job. I check names. Inez. He badged in this morning, she said. At 06:40. Under a subcontractor visa as a technical advisor. He's been on this compound for 12 hours. Nobody breathed. He's here, Inez said. He's in building 3. He's been in building 3 since before you landed. And at 7:12 in the evening, 4,000 miles from a quiet suburban street in Virginia, in a room with 11 people who had just decided to stop being afraid, Maya Reynolds started to laugh again. And this time, nobody in the room understood why. And she didn't explain it because the answer was too simple and too enormous to say out loud. Arthur Kessler had gotten on the plane first, which meant Arthur Kessler had never not for 1 second believed she would stay home, which meant the phone call at 10 o'clock at night had not been an offer or a taunt or a test. It had been a man calling from 4,000 miles away pretending to be in a chair in Virginia so that a woman in a hangar would picture him somewhere he wasn't. He's not steering me, Maya said. Ma'am, he's not steering me, she said again, and her eyes were bright and terrible. He's hiding from me. He's been hiding from me since the moment I said yes. And he's been so loud and so clever and so busy putting his voice in my ear from 4,000 miles away that not one person in this building thought to ask the only question that matters. Which question? Emeka said. Maya Reynolds picked up her bag off the table. What's in building 3, she said. At 7:13 p.m., Inez Duarte said, it's the technical annex. What's in it? Servers, comms, the camera archive, the badge system. She was scrolling and not looking up. Everything that remembers anything is in building 3, ma'am. Maya set her bag back down on the table. Say that one more time, she said. Slower. Inez looked up. Every record on this compound, she said. Gate logs, camera archive, badge in, badge out, radio traffic. It's all in one building, and the building is inside the perimeter contractor's scope, and the perimeter contractor is Halberd. Who has access? Badge restricted, 9 people. Read me the 9. Inez read the 9. 6 were Halberd. 2 were Atlasit, both of whom had rotated home in April and never been replaced. The 9th was a name she said quietly, almost apologetically, the way you'd say it in a hospital hallway. Thomas Vance, she said. The room did not move. Inez, Maya said. Who authorized that restriction? Inez's finger stopped on the screen. Ma'am, she said. Say it. Thomas Vance, she said, February 14th. At 7:16 p.m., Emeka Boateng made a sound like he'd been hit. 2 weeks before he died, he said, 2 weeks. Wait, Toby's voice cracked. Wait, Mr. Vance locked down the building himself. He locked down the building himself, Maya said, 18 days after he found the bid discrepancy and 13 days before he took it to his boss in Virginia. Why? Maya didn't answer right away. She was doing arithmetic in her head, and it was not the kind of arithmetic that made you feel better. Because he knew, she said, he knew exactly what he'd found, and he knew exactly what would happen to the proof. So he did the only thing a man like Tom Vance knows how to do. He filled out a form, he put the records behind a door, and he wrote his own name on the list, and he thought that was enough. It wasn't, Dimitri said. No. So they killed him and they took the door. They didn't take the door, Maya said. That's what I want everybody in this room to understand. They didn't have to take anything. Tom Vance locked the archive inside a building that Halberd already owned because on paper the annex is in their scope and page 40 says so, and Emeka read it 11 times. She looked at Emeka. He locked the evidence in the enemy's house and he thought he'd built a vault. Emeka put his hand over his mouth. He built a coffin. Cole said from the doorway. At 7:19 p.m., Maya said, "How many Halbert personnel are in Building 3 right now?" "I can't see inside," Inez said. "The internal badge readers report to their system, not mine." "So the building that remembers everything," Maya said, "doesn't remember who's in it." "Not to me. No, ma'am." Ghost pushed off the door frame. "Maya." "I know. Maya, say it out loud so these people hear it, because I don't think they've caught up." Maya turned to the room. "The man who is going to write the story of what happens here this week," she said, "is currently sitting inside the only building that could contradict him, and he's been sitting there for 12 hours, and he has 19 extra men on this compound, and nobody outside this room knows he's in the country." Inez Duarte sat down very suddenly. "Oh," she said. At 7:21 p.m., Toby Adeyemi said the thing that nobody wanted said. "Ma'am, should we go get him?" The room went silent. Toby: "No, ma'am, I'm asking a real question." He was standing again and his hands were shaking, and he was doing it anyway. "There are 12 of us. You. He's an old man in a building. Why are we standing here talking?" "Because that's the trap," Cole said. Everybody turned. Cole spoke for the 7th time in July, and it was the only time anybody ever heard him raise his voice. "Son, look at me. If 12 people walk across a compound and take a door off a building owned by a subcontractor, do you know what that is? That's not evidence collection. That's an armed assault by the prime contractor's security force against the perimeter contractor, ordered by a woman with a 2014 finding in her file 90 minutes after she stood in this room and accused them of murder." Cole's jaw worked. "It's the front page. It's the whole front page. You'd be handing him the photograph." Toby's chin came up. "Then what do we do?" At 7:23 p.m., Maya Reynolds said, "We file paperwork." 11 people stared at her. "I'm sorry, Dimitri said. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. Paperwork." "Inez." Maya didn't take her eyes off Dimitri. "The head count violation. 19 unauthorized personnel inside the wire. You flagged it Monday and their compliance officer told you it was a rotation overlap." "Yes." "Did you accept that answer?" Yes, I closed the ticket. Reopen it." Inez's hand hovered. "Reopen it," Maya said. "And this time don't send it to their compliance officer. Send it to the contracting officer's representative in Virginia, and copy the Atlas Legal Department, and copy Gerald Whitlock, and copy the insurance carrier, and put my name on it as the authorizing director, and timestamp it at 1925 local." "Ma'am, that's going to make everybody very angry." "Inez." Maya finally looked at her. "How many people in Virginia will read that email tonight?" Inez thought about it. "None," she admitted. "It's noon there. It's Wednesday. Nobody reads a compliance ticket at noon on a Wednesday." "Right. So what's the point?" At 7:25 p.m., Maya Reynolds smiled, and it was the smile Ghost remembered from a very long time ago, and it made the hair stand up on his arms. "The point," she said, "is that it exists." "Ma'am, it exists and it has a timestamp, and it says that at 1925 hours on Wednesday, before anything happened, before one shot, before one body, the new director of site security formally reported 19 unauthorized armed men inside the wire and named the contractor responsible." Maya put her knuckles on the table. "Inez, on Friday, when a man in a suit stands in front of a camera and says nobody could have known that email is the only sentence in the world that calls him a liar. And it'll be sitting in the inbox of a federal contracting officer, and it'll have been sitting there since Wednesday." Inez Duarte started typing. "He can delete my email," she said as she typed. "He owns the servers." "He owns these servers," Maya said. "Send it from your phone, personal account. Copy your own personal account. Copy your husband. I'm not married. Copy your mother." At 7:26 p.m., Inez Duarte laughed, and it was a terrible, unsteady laugh, and she kept typing. "Ma'am, my mother is 79 years old, and she lives in Braga." "Perfect," Maya said. "Now there's a copy of it in Braga." At 7:31 p.m., Priya Raman found Maya in the hallway. "You're going to walk over there," Priya said. "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes." "Maya." "Priya, I want to say something and I want you to let me finish." Priya's arms were crossed, and her voice was doing something it hadn't done in the hangar. 11 years ago, I sat in a room and a man asked me what I saw and I told the truth. And then I went home and nothing happened. Nothing. Not one thing. And I thought, okay, that's how it works. You tell the truth and it goes into a drawer, and you spend the next decade telling yourself that the drawer counts. Priya. Let me finish. She uncrossed her arms. Tonight I found out there was no drawer. There was never a drawer. There was a hallway and a man with an envelope. Maya didn't say anything. So when you walk over there, Priya said, I want you to understand something about the four of us. We're not here to protect the contract. We're not even here to protect you. And honestly, Maya, you'd be insulted if we were. Then why are you here? Because he took the drawer, Priya said. Because for 11 years I thought I told the truth and the world decided it didn't matter. And it turns out the world never heard it. Do you understand what that does to a person? I made peace with being ignored. I built a whole life on top of being ignored. And I built it on a lie he told me by not telling me anything at all. At 7:33 p.m., Maya Reynolds said, I'm sorry. Don't. Priya, I handed him. You were 29 and he was a captain, Priya said. And if you apologize to me one more time, I will put you through this wall and I can't, and we'll both be embarrassed. Maya laughed. It surprised her. Go, Priya said. Go make him look at you. At 7:40 p.m., Maya Reynolds crossed a compound and walked up to the door of Building 3 and did not knock. She stood in front of it, and she waited. At 7:41 p.m., a voice came out of a speaker beside the door. This is a restricted. Tell him it's the ground element, Maya said. 9 seconds. The door opened. The man who opened it was 35 Halberd and had clearly been told to look bored and had failed. Ma'am, I'll need to check your... He's in the second room on the left, Maya said, walking past him. He's had 12 hours, and he's a creature of habit, and he always sits with his back to a corner and a screen in front of him, and I promise you he's had the door open since 7:15 so he could hear me coming. The man didn't stop her. She noticed that. She would think about it later. At 7:43 p.m., Maya Reynolds walked into a room 4,000 miles from home and looked at Arthur Kessler for the first time in 11 years. He'd gotten old. That was the thing nobody warned you about. She'd spent 11 years building a monster in her head, and the monster had liver spots on the back of his hands and reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. And he stood up when she came in because he'd been raised to stand up when a woman entered a room, and the courtesy was so automatic and so obscene that Maya nearly lost her composure right there in the doorway. Lieutenant, he said, you're old. Kessler laughed. He actually laughed delighted and sat back down. That's the greeting 11 years. You called me last night from a chair in Virginia, Maya said. I never said where I was. You let me hear a house. I let you hear a recording of a house, Kessler said. It's 40 seconds of a refrigerator and a television. I've had it on my phone for 6 years. You'd be amazed how often it's useful. At 7:45 p.m., Maya Reynolds sat down without being asked. Why, she said. Why what? Why did you need me to think you were in Virginia? Sit up straight, you're slouching. Arthur, you're slouching because you're exhausted and you flew 11 hours and you've been running on a Denny's pancake since Saturday, Kessler said. And you're going to need to be sharp, so sit up straight. Maya sat up straight. She hated that she did. Better, Kessler said. Now, you asked me a question and I'm going to answer it honestly, which will not happen again tonight, so enjoy it. He took the glasses off his head and set them down. I needed you to think I was in Virginia because I have spent 4 months building something very expensive and very fragile, and the single greatest threat to it was that you would arrive here and immediately do the only thing you've ever been good at, which is looking at the right building. At 7:47 p.m., Maya said, so it's in here. What is say it? You say it, Kessler said. You've come all this way. Say it out loud so we can stop dancing. The recording, Maya said, from 2014. You never walked it in. You kept it. And you're sitting in a room with the servers because you're not stupid enough to leave it anywhere a court can reach. And because you can't stop touching it, and because a man who owns a thing like that eventually starts belonging to it. Kessler put his hands flat on the table. For a long moment, he said nothing at all. Then quietly he said, you're about 40% right, and the 60% is going to ruin your entire life. Enlighten me. No, Kessler said. Not like that, not for free. You want it, you're going to have to hear it in the right order, and it's going to take about 4 minutes, and I need you to not talk for 4 minutes, which will be the hardest thing you've ever done. Maya folded her hands. Talk, she said. At 7:49 p.m., Arthur Kessler said, I didn't bury the recording. You 4 minutes. Maya closed her mouth. I didn't bury it, Kessler said. I carried it. There's a difference, and it's the whole difference. And you've never once considered it because you've spent 11 years needing me to be simple. He leaned back. In 2014, you handed me a recording in a hallway, and I said I'd walk it in. And I walked it in, Lieutenant. I walked it directly into an office, and I put it on a desk, and I said this exonerates the ground element, and it hangs the authorization, and it hangs it on you, sir. Maya's hands were very still. And he listened to it, Kessler said. The whole thing. 41 minutes. He didn't fast forward. I'll give him that for the rest of my life, he didn't fast forward. And when it was over, he took his glasses off the way I just did. Isn't that funny? You learn it from your seniors like a limp. His voice had gone strange. And he said, Arthur, do you know what this does? Who? Maya said. 4 minutes. Who? He said if this goes in the file, Kessler continued, the finding will be no fault. Not because it's true, because a no-fault finding is what happens when a review cannot survive its own conclusion. He looked up, and I said, Sir, a man is dead. And he said, Arthur, 4 men went out and 2 came back. And if we put this in the file, then in 6 weeks, there's a hearing, and in 6 months, there's a policy, and in 6 years, there's a rule that says nobody goes out at all. The room was silent. And then he said the sentence, Kessler said. He said, I am not going to let one dead man cost me the next 100. At 7:52 p.m., Maya Reynolds said, That's a beautiful sentence. Yes. He rehearsed it. No, Kessler said. That's the horror of it, Lieutenant. He didn't. He said it the way you'd say the time. And what did you say? Arthur Kessler was quiet for a moment. I said, yes, sir, he said. At 7:53 p.m., nobody in that room breathed. That's it, Kessler said. That's the whole thing. That's the entire story of my life in 2 words in a room with the door shut. 26 years, 4 wars, 600 men, and it comes down to a 60-year-old man saying yes, sir, to a sentence he knew was obscene because the alternative was being the man who ended his own career in a hallway on a Tuesday. So you kept it. I kept it, Kessler said. I walked out of that office with the recording still in my hand because he never asked for it. That's the part that'll keep you up. He never asked. He assumed. He assumed the way you assume the sun. He looked at me and saw a man who had said yes, sir, and he stopped thinking about me entirely, and I have spent 11 years being the only thing on earth he never thought about. Maya said, who is he? Kessler smiled. Ah, he said, now we're at the 60%. At 7:55 p.m., Arthur Kessler said a name, and Maya Reynolds felt the floor of the world go out from under her for the second time in 4 days. Say it again, she said. You heard it. Say it again, Arthur. He's not an admiral anymore, Kessler said. He hasn't been an admiral in 6 years. He's a civilian now, very distinguished, very quiet. He runs a very small office with a very long name, and the long name is why you've never heard of it, and I promise you it's on your paperwork. That's not Lieutenant. Think. Kessler leaned forward. Who signs off on foreign infrastructure security contracts with an American prime? No. Who is the contracting officer's representative for Meridian? At 7:56 p.m., Maya Reynolds stood up so fast her chair went over backward. Ines just sent him an email, she said. Kessler said nothing. Arthur. Her voice had gone to a place she hadn't been in 11 years. Arthur at 7:25 local, my access control officer, sent a formal violation notice from her personal account, naming 19 unauthorized personnel and naming Halberd Group and naming me to the contracting officer's representative. Kessler said nothing. Tell me you're lying, Maya said. Tell me right now that you're lying because you're good at it. You're so good at it, and I'm asking you as a favor to lie to me. I'm not lying, Kessler said. And Lieutenant, listen to me very carefully because you're about to do something stupid. He hasn't read it, Kessler said. It's noon on a Wednesday in Virginia. Nobody reads a compliance ticket at noon on a Wednesday. You said that yourself an hour ago in a room with 11 people in it. At 7:57 p.m., the world stopped. Maya stood absolutely still. How do you know what I said in that room? She said. Arthur Kessler picked up his glasses and put them back on his head and did not look away from her. 4 minutes are up, he said. At 7:58 p.m., Maya Reynolds put both hands on the table and leaned all the way into an old man's face. Who? She said. No. Arthur. No, Kessler said. Not because I'm protecting anybody. I'm 67 years old and I have a very expensive lawyer, and nothing on this earth would give me more pleasure than watching you take somebody apart. He took his glasses off again, and his hands, Maya noticed, were not entirely steady. I'm not telling you because the second you know you'll act and the second you act, you're finished. He's counting on you finding it. It's the whole design. Every single thing that's happened to you since June was built to get you standing in a room with a name in your mouth and 11 witnesses watching you say it. You built it. I built the machine, Kessler said. I want to be very precise because it's the only dignity I've got left. I built the machine. He aimed it. At 8 p.m., Maya said, "Why are you telling me any of this?" And Arthur Kessler, for the first time in 11 years, looked away. Because I'm tired, he said. That's not. You want a better reason, there isn't one. There's no letter I wrote. There's no crisis of faith. I'm 67 and I have a boat I never use and a daughter who calls twice a year, and about 9 months ago I started waking up at 4 in the morning with my heart going like a bird, and I'd lie there and do arithmetic. He laughed. Do you know what the arithmetic was? Rios's kid. I'd figure out how old he was. Every night, 4 in the morning. He's 13. He was 13 in January. Maya couldn't speak. So no, Kessler said. I'm not a good man having a moment. I'm a coward who got old, and old cowards get talkative. And that's all this is. And if you're waiting for me to hand you a hard drive and weep, you're going to be here a long time. At 8:02 p.m., Maya said, then give me the recording. No, Arthur. It's the only reason I'm still breathing, Kessler said, and his voice went absolutely flat. Lieutenant, look at me. Do you think I'm the top? Do you think a man who is a captain runs anything? I'm a subcontractor? I'm a fence company. The day that recording leaves my hands is the day I stop being expensive to kill, and I have known that every single morning for 11 years, and it is the entire architecture of my life. So you'll sit here. I'll sit here. While 19 men who aren't on any manifest walk around a compound full of people who have kids at university. Yes. While a 28-year-old girl in Virginia sits in an apartment with a dead man's laptop. At 08:03 p.m., Arthur Kessler said, Ruth Alvarez. The room went so quiet, Maya could hear the servers. I didn't know it last night, Kessler said. You were right. You were completely right, and it was the best thing anybody's done to me in a decade. And I hung up on you because you'd caught me and I couldn't stand it. He looked up at her. I know it now. How? You know how. Say it. Lieutenant, I've known it since 7:04 this evening. At 8:04 p.m., Maya Reynolds understood that there had been 12 people in that briefing room, and she had counted 11. She did not move. She did not blink. Everything in her went absolutely quiet, the way it had on a sidewalk in Virginia with a barrel against her skull. Who? She said. That's a better question than you know, Kessler said. Because the honest answer is I don't know either. Bull. I get texts, Kessler said. That's all. That's the whole relationship. I've had a source in that building since April, and I've never met them. Never heard their voice, never seen a face. They text a number. They've never asked for money. He paused. That's the part you should be frightened of. In 4 months, they've never once asked for money. Maya's mouth was dry. Then what do they want? I don't know, Kessler said. And Lieutenant, I've done this for 40 years, and I want you to understand what I'm telling you. I can handle greed. Greed is a leash. Fear is a leash. Ambition is the best leash there is. He put his glasses down very carefully. I have never in my life been able to control a volunteer. At 8:06 p.m., Maya turned and walked out of the room. Reynolds, she stopped in the doorway. You're going to want to run over there, Kessler said. Don't. Give me a reason. Because if you run, they'll know you know, he said. And whoever it is has been sitting in that building for 4 months without asking for anything, and people like that don't panic. They finish. Maya's hand was on the frame. Arthur. What? Rios's boy is 13, she said. His name is Miguel. He's a sophomore next year. He plays baseball badly, and he's very funny. And his mother sends me a Christmas card every single year, and I have never once opened one. She heard him breathe. Do your arithmetic at 4 in the morning, Maya said, but get his name right. At 8:11 p.m., Maya walked into the operations room and said in a completely normal voice, Inez, what time's the canteen close? Inez looked up confused. 2100. Good, everybody eat. Toby, you look like death, go eat. Dimitri, take him. Emeka, you're on shift at 10, get your head down. Ma'am. Emeka, go to bed. At 8:12, the room emptied, and Ghost shut the door, and Maya Reynolds sat down on the floor with her back against a server rack and put her head in her hands. Say it, Ghost said. There's 12, she said. Cole's head turned. There were 12 people in that briefing, Maya said. I counted 11 because I counted staff, and the 12th is one of them, and Kessler's known about Ruth since 7:04, which is 9 minutes after Ruth's name was said out loud in that room. 9 minutes, Ghost. Maya. I said her name in a room. Maya's voice cracked all the way down the middle. I stood up there and gave a speech about how you can't do it to 12, and I was so proud of myself. I was so proud, and I said her name. At 8:14 p.m., Ghost sat down on the floor next to her. Okay, he said. Don't. Maya listened to Ghost. She's 28. She has a plastic reindeer. She got a C in ethics. Maya listened to me. He took her wrist. Listen, did you say her name? Yes. Did you say the word laptop? Maya stopped. She went back through it, second by second, the way she'd been trained to and had been doing since 1998 and had never once found comforting until this exact moment. No, she said slowly. Say it again. I said a 28-year-old girl in Virginia sits in an apartment with, that's tonight, Ghost said. That's what you said to Kessler in his room 5 minutes ago. In the briefing, you said her name, and you said one sentence, and the sentence was, the word is reindeer she'll know. No, that was in the hangar. Maya. She stared at the wall. In the briefing, Ghost said very slowly, you said Ruth Alvarez sends it. That's what Whitlock said in the hangar, and that's what you repeated tonight. You said a name and a verb. You never said what she has. At 8:16 p.m., Maya Reynolds said, so the 12th person told Kessler a name and a verb. And Kessler knew in 9 minutes that Ruth Alvarez has the laptop. Did he say laptop? Cole said. Both of them looked up. Cole was standing over them, and his face had done something nobody had ever seen it do. Ma'am, think, did Arthur Kessler use the word laptop tonight at any point in that room? Maya went back, second by second. No, she said. He said her name. That's all he said. He said Ruth Alvarez and let me fill in the rest. Cole crouched down. Ma'am, he said, he doesn't know about the laptop. He knows a name, and you just spent 4 minutes in a chair filling in every single blank in the man's intelligence picture for free because he said her name in the right tone of voice. At 8:18 p.m., Maya Reynolds put her head back against a server rack and laughed until she couldn't breathe. He's so good, she said. He's very good. Ghost, he's so good. Yeah. I've been in that room for 25 minutes, and I gave him Ruth. I gave him the laptop. I gave him that I know about the COR. I gave him... You also got a name, Cole said. The laughing stopped. At 8:19 p.m., Priya Raman came through the door without knocking and said, Maya, your mother's calling. The room turned. What? Your mother is calling, Priya said. Your personal phone. It's been ringing for 2 minutes. It's 12:15 in the afternoon in Virginia. Maya was on her feet before she'd decided to be. At 8:20 p.m. she answered. Mom? Well, there she is, Eleanor Reynolds said. You know I called you twice. Mom, are you? I'm at Deb's. I'm looking at 9 geese on a wallpaper border. I'm fine, don't do that thing with your voice. A pause. Maya, a man came to the house. The room could hear it. Priya put her hand over her mouth. Say all of it, Maya said. This morning. Your house, not Deb's. I went by to water the plants because somebody has to, and you didn't ask, which I've decided to forgive. Rustling, a chair. There was a young man on the porch. Mom. He was about 26, Eleanor said, And he was standing on the porch like a Jehovah's Witness, and Maya, he'd been crying. At 8:21 p.m., Maya Reynolds said, "What did he say?" He said, "Are you Mrs. Reynolds?" And I said, "Who's asking?" And he said, "Ma'am, I need you to know that I'm not going to do it." Nobody in that operations room made a sound. I said, "Do what?" Eleanor said. And he said, "Ma'am, please don't ask me that." And then he stood there for about 10 seconds, and then he said the strangest thing I've ever heard in my life, and I've been alive 73 years. What did he say? He said, "She asked me my name." Maya closed her eyes. And I said, "Well, what is it?" Eleanor said. And he told me, and then he apologized for taking up my time, and he went down the steps, and then he stopped at the bottom, and he turned around and he said, "Ma'am, tell her the audit's not the only thing." At 8:23 p.m., Maya said, "Mom, what was his name?" "Daniel," Eleanor said. "Daniel Reyes. He wrote it on the back of a receipt because I asked him to, because I'm not an idiot, and it's sitting on my kitchen table under the sugar bowl." Maya put her hand over her mouth. "Baby," Eleanor said, "was that a bad thing or a good thing?" At 8:24 p.m., Maya Reynolds said, "Mom, that was a man deciding to be a person." "Well," Eleanor said, "it's about time somebody did." At 8:29 p.m., Priya had the receipt name into a laptop, and at 8:41 she looked up and her face was gray. "Daniel Reyes," she said, 26, Halberd Group, hired in January. "Where is he?" "He's on the Thursday manifest," Priya said. "He's on the rotation flight, 1400 day after tomorrow." Ghost said, "He's coming here." "He's coming here," Priya said. "And Maya, he's one of the 19. "No," Cole said. Everybody turned. "He's not one of the 19, Cole said quietly. "The 19 badged in over the last 9 days. They're already inside. He's on the flight after." He looked up. "Ma'am, he's not part of the force. He's part of the story." Maya's voice was barely there. "Say it." 19 men do the thing, Cole said. One man arrives after, clean on a legitimate manifest, and finds it. He's the witness. He's the boy who stands in front of a camera with red eyes and says, "I saw what she did." At 8:44 p.m., Maya Reynolds said, "And he came to my mother's porch and told her he wouldn't do it." Nobody said anything. "He came to a 73-year-old woman's porch," Maya said, "in a country where nobody would ever know, and blew up 4 months of somebody's plan for free because a woman he'd put a gun to asked him what his name was." Priya was crying and didn't seem to notice. "He said the audit's not the only thing," Ghost said. "What's that mean?" "It means there's a second set," Maya said. "It means somewhere there's a document that doesn't match, and he's seen it, and he doesn't have it, or he'd have brought it." At 8:47 p.m., Maya said, "Where's Toby?" The room stopped. "Canteen," Priya said. "You sent him to eat." "Inez." "Ma'am, badge log, Toby's housing block. Last 24 hours. At 8:48 p.m., Inez Duarte's face changed and Maya knew before she said a word. "Say it." "Ma'am," Inez said, "the housing block reader logged in access at 1904. Nobody breathed. "Whose badge?" Maya said. "That's the thing." Inez's voice was very small. "It doesn't say. It's a maintenance override. There's no name on a maintenance override. It just says the door opened." At 8:49 p.m., Maya said 7:04. "Yes, ma'am." 7:04 is when they stood up, Ghost said. 7:04 is when Toby said the word drive in a room with 12 people in it. At 8:50 p.m., Maya Reynolds was moving. At 8:53 p.m., she was standing in a 23-year-old man's room, and there was a drawer open, and there were socks on the floor, and Toby Adeyemi was standing in the doorway with a plate of food in his hands, and the plate hit the floor. "No," he said. "Toby. No, no, no. Toby, look at me. It was right there, ma'am. It was right there. It's been right there for 4 months. It's been. Toby." Maya took him by both shoulders. "Look at me. Breathe. Look at me and breathe." He looked at her. He breathed. He was 23 years old and his whole body was shaking and he was breathing. "Was it in that drawer?" Maya said. And Toby Adeyemi said no. At 8:54 p.m., Maya Reynolds said, "What? No." Toby said. He was breathing in gulps. "No, ma'am, it was never in that drawer. I said that in the briefing because Toby, because you told me not to look scared," he said, And I panicked, and I said the first place I thought of, and it was Elam, and I've been sick about it for 2 hours, ma'am. I've been sitting in the canteen thinking I'm going to prison for lying to my boss on my first day. Maya let go of him. She sat down on the edge of a 23-year-old man's bed in a housing block 4,000 miles from Virginia and put her face in her hands and made a sound that was not quite laughing. "Toby," she said. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry." "Toby, where is it?" At 8:56 p.m., Toby Adeyemi said, "It's in camera 9. Maya's head came up. "It's in the housing of camera 9, he said. "There's a dead space in the mount. It's a 2 terabyte drive, and it's the size of a wallet, and it's zip-tied inside the housing of camera 9, and it's been there since 2023. And the reason it's there is that in 2023, I got written up for losing footage, and I was 20 and I was furious, and I hid it inside the exact thing they said I couldn't be trusted with." At 8:57 p.m., Ghost said from the doorway, "Where's camera 9? Toby looked at him. And then Toby Adeyemi said the sentence that ended the evening. "Camera 9's on building 3, he said. Nobody moved. "It's on the north face," Toby said. "It's the one that watches the annex door. It's been watching that door for 3 years. At 8:58 p.m., Maya Reynolds stood up very slowly. "Toby," she said, "say this next part exactly right." "Ma'am, does camera 9 record the annex door?" "Yes, ma'am. Every day? Every day. Since 2023. Since 2023, 2 a.m. mirror every night." At 8:59 p.m., Maya Reynolds said, "Toby, who badged into building 3 at 6:40 this morning?" Toby's mouth opened. He didn't say anything. He just started nodding faster and faster, his eyes enormous. "He's been in that building 12 hours, Maya said. "He walked in this morning under a false visa. He has never once in his life been photographed on this compound. There is no record of Arthur Kessler entering this country because his company owns every record on this compound, and he's sitting on top of the archive right now like a man on a nest." "And camera 9 isn't in the archive," Ghost said. "Camera 9 isn't in the archive," Maya said. "Camera 9 is in camera 9. At 9:01 p.m., Priya Raman said from the hallway in a voice like a woman falling Maya. Everybody turned. She was holding her laptop. "The Halberd compliance officer just reopened Ines's ticket," she said. "So, he didn't close it," Priya said. "He escalated it. He escalated it up the chain at 0430 Eastern, which is 12:15 local, which is 9 minutes ago." Maya went cold. "To who?" she said. Priya turned the laptop around and her hands were shaking, and Maya Reynolds looked at a name in a routing field and understood all at once that she had been wrong about everything, that Arthur Kessler had not lied to her once in that entire room, and that the most dangerous thing in the world is a man who tells you the truth in the wrong order. The email had not gone to the contracting officer's representative. It had gone to the address that Ines had copied. Gerald Whitlock. And under it, in the forwarding chain, timestamped 4 minutes later, was a line that made the floor tilt 6 degrees to the left, forwarded by G. Whitlock. One attachment. Subject Reynolds. Maya Reynolds read the routing field 3 times. "Priya," she said, "open the attachment." "Maya, if it's open it." Priya Raman opened a 40-page PDF, and the first page was a photograph of Maya Reynolds at 29 years old sitting in a room with a very long table, and the second page said in bold above a paragraph she had memorized 11 years ago, "The review finds that the ground element exceeded the parameters of the authorization." Nobody said a word. "He sent my file," shh, Maya said. "He sent your file." Gerald Whitlock got a compliance ticket about 19 armed men in the middle of the night, Maya said. "And instead of picking up a phone, instead of calling me, instead of calling anybody, he attached my 2014 review to it and forwarded it up the chain and titled it Reynolds." Ghost said, "That's not a man saving his skin." "No. Maya, that's a man who had it ready." She sat down on the edge of Toby Adeyemi's bed for the second time in 10 minutes, and she understood all at once that Arthur Kessler had told her the truth. Every word of it, in the wrong order on purpose, and she had walked out of that room feeling clever. "He aimed the machine," she said. "That's what Kessler told me. I built it, he aimed it. And I sat there, and I said, 'Who?' And he said no, and I felt so smart. Ghost, I felt so smart, because I thought he was protecting a name. He wasn't. He was protecting the sequence," Maya said. He needed me to walk out of there hunting an admiral. He needed me looking up. Because if I'm looking up, I'm not looking at a 61-year-old man in McLean who cried in his own kitchen before sunrise and handed me a briefcase and a hanger. Priya said very quietly, Maya, he gave us everything, the drafts, the number, the dates, his own signed statement. He confessed to a felony. Nobody confesses to a felony to protect himself. Yes, they do. Maya, a confession is a document, Maya said. And a document is a thing you control. She looked up. Priya, what's in that briefcase? Everything. Everything except one thing. There's no recording, there's no audio, 40 pages of paper, and not one voice on any of it. Cole spoke from the doorway. Ma'am, he built you an evidence package with no evidence in it. He built me a story, Maya said. A beautiful one. A frightened old man, a frog ringtone, a granddaughter's backpack, and a woman who came to his door before dawn and believed every single word of it because she wanted to. Because she needed one person in this whole thing to be a hostage instead of a volunteer. Maya. He never said Kessler's name until I was already crying, she said. Do you understand what I'm telling you? He didn't lie to me, not once. He just waited. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Ghost said, Then who's the 12th? And everything stopped because that had been the question the whole time, standing in the corner of the room with its hands in its pockets, waiting to be looked at. Inez, Maya said. Inez Duarte's head came up so fast she nearly dropped the tablet. Ma'am, I swear on my mother's life, I have never… Inez, breathe. Nobody's accusing you. Maya stood. You told me 9 people have badge access to Building 3. 6 Halberd, 2 Atlas IT who rotated home in April, and Tom Vance. Yes. The 2 IT guys, names. Inez said 2 names. Priya typed them, and then Priya stopped typing. Maya, say it. One of them didn't rotate home, Priya said. He's listed as departed. He is not listed as arrived on any inbound flight in Virginia. He never landed anywhere. He just stops. Where is he, ma'am? Inez said, and her voice had gone thin. According to payroll, he's been paid every 2 weeks since April into an account. His badge has never been used again, and nobody has looked for him. Nobody has looked for him for 4 months because his supervisor was Thomas Vance, and Thomas Vance died 11 days before he left. Nobody breathed. Say his name again, Maya said. Peter Lang. Maya stood very still in the middle of a 23-year-old man's room with socks on the floor, and she felt the whole thing turn over. He's not the leak, she said. Everybody looked at her. He's not the leak, she said again. He's the body. Priya put her hand over her mouth. Kessler told me his source has never asked for money. 4 months, not $1, not one favor. And I said, that's frightening. And he said, I've never been able to control a volunteer. She was pacing now fast. Ghost. What if it isn't a volunteer? What if it's a dead man's phone? Somebody's been texting Arthur Kessler from Peter Lang's number. Somebody's been texting Arthur Kessler from Peter Lang's number since April. Maya said, and Kessler thinks he owns a source inside Atlas, and he's been feeding him for 4 months. And he has been so pleased with himself, and he does not know. Cole said, then who's holding the phone? And Maya said, somebody who needed Kessler to feel safe. She went to the door. Toby, camera 9. Not tonight, not tomorrow. Thursday, 5 minutes before the rotation flight lands, when every halberd body on this compound is standing on the airfield staring at an airplane. Ma'am, that's 36 hours. 36 hours, Maya said. Inez reopened nothing, send nothing, log nothing. Priya, get me Ruth Alvarez on a phone that isn't a phone. And you, Ghost said, I'm going back to Building 3. Maya, he told me the truth in the wrong order, she said. I'd like to return the favor. Arthur Kessler looked up when she came through the door and said, that was fast. Whitlock sent my file. Kessler's face did not move. Say something, Maya said. What would you like me to say? Say you knew. I knew, Kessler said. She sat down across from him without being invited the way she had before, and she put both hands flat on the table. Arthur, I want you to do arithmetic for me. Not at 4 in the morning. Right now, out loud. Lieutenant Peter Lang, Maya said, and she watched a 67-year-old man's face do something she had never in 11 years seen it do. She watched it go blank. Who? Kessler said. That's not a question. That's a stall. Maya leaned in. You've never stalled in your life, so let me help you. Peter Lang, Atlas, IT, one of 9 badges into this building. Listed as departed on April 11th. Never landed in Virginia, still on payroll. Kessler said nothing. Your source, Arthur, since April. Arthur Kessler stood up, and it was not the courtly reflex of an old man standing when a woman enters a room. It was something else. He put both hands on the table and he was not steady on them. Get out, he said. Arthur, get out of my room. You've been texting a dead man. Get out. 4 months, Maya said, and she did not move an inch. 4 months of somebody telling you exactly what you needed to hear, exactly when you needed to hear it. Never asking for $1. And you sat in that chair tonight and told me it frightened you. It frightened you because some part of you already knew. At 4 in the morning doing your arithmetic, some part of you already. I said get out. He swept a laptop off the table and it hit the wall and broke, and an old man stood in a room with servers humming behind him and shook like a man in a wind. Maya didn't move. Sit down, Arthur, she said quietly. He sat down. He sat down the way a building sits down. How long have you known? I haven't known anything. How long have you suspected? Arthur Kessler stared at the table for a long time. Since the mother, he said. Maya went very still. I never authorized the street, he said. I told you that on the phone and you decided it was a line. It wasn't. Lieutenant, I have run operations for 40 years and I have never once, not one time, put a man's family into a message. Not because I'm decent, because it doesn't work. You threaten a man's mother and you don't get compliance. You get a lunatic. Every professional alive knows that. It's the first thing you learn and the last thing you'd forget. Then who sent them? I got a text, Kessler said, from my source. It said she's wavering, she needs a push. The mother used these exact words. He was staring at his own hands. And I read it and something in me said no. And I did it anyway. Why? Because doing it was easier than asking myself who I was talking to, Kessler said. Maya sat back. You handed someone else's script to Daniel Reyes. Who? The boy, she said. The one with the gun against my head. 26 years old. He was reading somebody's words off a page and he couldn't keep the deadline straight for 90 seconds. And I told him whoever wrote it didn't respect him. She leaned down. It wasn't your script, Arthur. That's why it was bad. You'd never have put 24 hours and Monday morning in the same paragraph. You've never written a sloppy sentence in your life. Kessler closed his eyes. No, he said, I wouldn't have. The 19 men, not mine. Arthur, not mine, he said, and his voice cracked, and for 1 second he sounded 80 instead of 67. I authorized 22. My own compliance officer told me it was a rotation overlap. Lieutenant, I read the same email your girl read, and I accepted the same answer she did, because that is what I am. I am the man who accepts answers. It's the only thing I've ever been good at. I've been accepting answers since 2014 in a hallway. The servers hummed. Where's the recording? Maya said. Arthur Kessler looked up and he was crying and he was not ashamed of it, and that was the worst thing Maya had ever seen in her life. That's the joke, he said. Say it. I don't know. Arthur, it's in that rack, he pointed. He didn't turn his head. He just lifted a hand and pointed at a server 4 feet behind him. It's been in that rack since April, because my source told me it was safer inside the compound archive than carrying a drive-through customs. And it was such a good argument, Lieutenant. It was such a good argument. And I said yes. Maya's mouth was dry. You put it in their building. I put it in their building, Kessler said. Exactly the way Tom Vance did. That poor man locked his evidence in my house, and I locked mine in his, as in neither of us ever once stopped to ask whose house it actually was. Whose house is it, Arthur? And Arthur Kessler, founder and managing partner of Halbert Group, retired Navy captain, the monster she had built in her head for 11 years, said, I don't know. 36 hours later, in a rental car in a parking lot in Virginia, Ruth Alvarez sat with a laptop on her knees and a phone pressed to her ear. Ruth, Maya said, are you ready? No, Ryan. Good answer. Ma'am, my hands are shaking so bad I can barely hold them. Ruth, listen to me. In 15 minutes, you're going to press send on the most important email of your life from a parking lot in a rental car by yourself. And here's the thing nobody's told you yet. Maya's voice was absolutely steady. You are the only person in this entire story who never once did the wrong thing first. Not one time, not me, not Whitlock, not Kessler, not any of us. Everybody in this story got here by way of a hallway. You got here by way of a closet with a plastic reindeer in it. Ruth made a small, wrecked sound. Ma'am, I'm so scared. I know. How do you do it? Maya was quiet for a second. You go first, she said. That's all it is. That's the whole trick. Somebody's got to go first. 4,000 miles away, while 41 Halberd personnel stood on an airfield watching an airplane come in, Toby Adeyemi climbed a mount on the north face of Building 3 and came down 2 minutes later with something the size of a wallet in his fist and carried it across a compound at a perfectly normal walking pace, with his heart going like a bird, and plugged it into a laptop in a room with the door shut and 11 people standing around it. Nobody made a sound, because there it was. March 4th, 23:40 at night, a gate opening, and a car sitting on the road outside the wire with its lights off exactly where Emeka Boateng had said it was exactly where he had written it in a log that no longer existed. Emeka put both hands over his face and made a sound like something structural giving way. There it is, Maya said. Emeka, look at it. You wrote it down and they burned the log and the camera kept it anyway. Ma'am, you were right. For 4 months you've been carrying it alone, and you were right the whole time. Priya said, Maya, run it forward. What? Camera 9 watches the annex door. Run it to April 11th. April 11th came up, 4 in the morning. The annex door opened and Peter Lang walked out of Building 3 carrying a bag. And then the door opened again. And somebody followed him. Freeze it, Maya said. Ma'am, it's dark, I can't get. Freeze it, Toby. Camera 9 has infrared. The image came up, and Maya Reynolds looked at a face she had known for 6 days. No, Inez said. No. Say his name, Maya said, and Inez Duarte, in a voice with nothing left in it at all, said, Dmitri. Nobody moved. Dmitri Sokolov, Inez said. He's been here 6 years. Ma'am, he came to my sister's wedding. He danced with my mother. Ghost said he still somebody up in that briefing. He stood up and volunteered to walk Toby to his room. He volunteered, Cole said, and Maya Reynolds went cold all the way through because Arthur Kessler had said a sentence in a room, and she had heard it and filed it and not understood one word of it, and now she did. I've never been able to control a volunteer, she said. Where is he right now, Ghost said. Airfield, Inez whispered. He's meeting the rotation flight. The flight with Daniel Reyes on it. Maya was already out the door. She walked onto an airfield where 41 armed men were standing around an airplane, and she walked past every single one of them, and not one of them stopped her or even looked twice, and she found Dmitri Sokolov standing at the bottom of the stairs waiting for a 26-year-old boy with red eyes. Dmitri, he turned, and his face was so ordinary, so entirely and completely ordinary, that for 1 second Maya nearly lost her nerve. Ma'am, he said. April 11th, 4 in the morning, Building 3. Dmitri Sokolov did not run. He did not reach for anything. He did not lie. He said, Did you find the drive? Yes. Good, he said. Maya's head came up. I'd say that again. Good, Dmitri said. I have been waiting 4 months for somebody to find it. Dmitri, you killed a man. Peter Lang is alive, Dmitri said. The world stopped turning. He's in Lisbon, Dmitri said. He has been alive since April 11th. I put him on a boat, and then on a plane, and then in a room with a door that locks, and I have been paying for it out of a payroll account I never closed, and he is alive, ma'am. And if you had waited 1 more day, you would have known that, because he flies Saturday. Maya could barely get the word out. Why? And Dmitri Sokolov, 44 years old, 6 years on that compound, a wedding ring he never stopped turning, said, because Tom Vance asked me to. Nobody on that airfield made a sound. March 3rd, Dmitri said, the night before. He came to my room at 11 o'clock, and he said, Dmitri, if something happens to me, they'll go for Lang next, because Lang's the only other man with a badge. And I said, sir, nothing is going to happen to you. And he said, Dmitri, I have to go see a man about a number. And I said, then don't go. And he said, I have to. Dmitri's voice finally broke apart in the middle. And then he said the thing. He said, if it goes bad, don't be brave. Be useful. Maya could not speak. So I wasn't brave, Dmitri said. For 4 months, I was not brave. I took a dead man's phone and I started texting Arthur Kessler and I told him I was his source and he believed me in 9 days. 9 days, ma'am, because he wanted to. You fed him. I fed him, Dmitri said. True things, small ones. I gave him the head count overlap so that his own compliance officer would tell him a lie and he would accept it because I needed him to stay a man who accepts answers. I needed him comfortable. He looked up and his eyes were red and dry. And when they told me to write the script for the street, I wrote it badly on purpose. You wrote it. I wrote it, Dmitri said. 24 hours and Monday morning in the same paragraph. Because I needed you to look at that boy and see a tool instead of a man. I needed you to see the seam. He wiped his face with the back of his wrist. And ma'am, I put your mother's name in it. I did that. I put a 73-year-old woman's name in a criminal's mouth on her daughter's street, and I have thought about it every hour of every day since, and I will think about it until I die. Why, Maya said again, and it came out cracked. Because I needed you here, Dmitri said. Because Tom Vance died and nobody came. Because Peter Lang vanished and nobody noticed. Because I sat on this compound for 4 months alone with a dead man's phone and 11 people who were afraid of the fence. And I read your file. I read what happened to you in 2014 and I knew, ma'am. I knew that the only person on this earth who would not let this go was a woman who'd already had it taken from her once. Maya stood there with the whole thing in her hands. You steered me. Yes. Everybody's been steering me. Yes, Dmitri said. And you came anyway. That is not the same thing, ma'am. You said it yourself in that room in front of all of us. Knowing is the whole difference. Maya breathed out. The man in the car, she said. March 4th. Who's in the car? And Dmitri Sokolov said, you already know. Say it. He's not an admiral, Dmitri said. He hasn't been an admiral in 6 years. Dmitri. Ma'am, ask yourself why Gerald Whitlock had your file ready in the middle of the night. Dmitri's voice was very quiet. He didn't have it ready. He forwarded it in 11 seconds because he is a terrified man, and terrified men forward things. And the person he forwarded it to is the person who listened to 41 minutes of audio in 2014 and took his glasses off and said, I am not going to let one dead man cost me the next 100. Maya Reynolds said the name out loud for the first time in her life, and Dmitri nodded. He was in the car, he said. He flew commercial. He was on this compound for 9 hours on March 4th, and there is no record of it anywhere on Earth, ma'am. Not one, except one. Camera 9. Camera 9, Dmitri said. It's been on that drive since March, sitting in a housing on a wall 6 meters above the door of the building he was standing in. And I could not touch it, because the second I touched it, I was a man alone with a video, and a man alone with a video is a man in a car at 2 in the morning on a road that doesn't go anywhere. So you waited, Maya said. So I waited for 12, Dmitri said. Behind them, a 26-year-old boy came down the airplane stairs with red eyes and stopped dead when he saw them. Daniel Reyes, Maya said. He froze. You went to my mother's porch. Daniel Reyes said, ma'am, I'm not going to do it. I know. They told me I'd land and I'd find a body and I'd say what I saw and they'd give me $200,000. He was already crying and he was 26 and he was saying it anyway in front of 41 men. And I sat in my car outside your house for 2 hours and all I could think about was you asking me my name. Nobody's ever asked me my name, ma'am. Not once in my life, not one time. Maya Reynolds stood on an airfield and looked at the boy who had put a gun to the back of her skull. Daniel, she said, what did you mean the audit isn't the only thing? And Daniel Reyes said, there's a second manifest. Say all of it. The 19, they badged in on the compound manifest. That's Halberd's system. That's the one they control. He was talking fast now, tumbling. But they flew in on a charter, and charters file with the Aviation Authority. And the Aviation Authority's filing has a passenger list on it, a real one with a real name that is not on the compound manifest. Because he never badged in, because he came in on the plane and never left the terminal. Maya's voice was barely there. He's here. He landed at 8 this morning, Daniel Reyes said. He's been sitting in that terminal for 6.5 hours. And he's waiting, ma'am, and I know exactly what he's waiting for because I was supposed to be the one who gave it to him. Maya Reynolds turned around and looked at 41 men standing on an airfield, and then she started laughing. It came up out of her the same way it had on a sidewalk in Virginia at 22 minutes past 6 on a Tuesday evening, tired and cracked and completely without fear, and 41 armed men turned and stared at a woman laughing on a runway, and not one of them understood why. "Ma'am," Dmitri said, "he's in the terminal." "Yes. He's been sitting in a terminal since 8 o'clock this morning, waiting for a phone call telling him it's done." "Yes," Maya wiped her eyes. "Dmitri," she said, "who does he think is going to make that call?" Dmitri Sokolov's face changed. "Me," he said, and Maya Reynolds said, "Then make it." A man walked out of a terminal onto an airfield because a text told him it was finished. He was 64 years old. He was wearing a very good suit. He had been a very important man for a very long time, and he crossed that tarmac the way men like that cross everything, unhurried, patient, expecting the world to have already arranged itself in his favor. What he found was 12 people standing in a line. Not 19 armed men, not a body, not a story. 12 people. A woman in the middle of them. A boy of 26 with red eyes. A 44-year-old man holding a phone. And a 23-year-old holding a hard drive in both hands like it was a baby. He stopped walking. "Ma'am," Toby whispered. He stopped. "I know." "Ma'am, he's just standing there." "I know." Maya walked out to meet him alone. She stopped about 6 feet away, and she looked at the man who had said one sentence in one room in 2014 and eaten 11 years of her life with it. "Do you know who I am?" she said. He looked at her, and Maya watched him try. She watched a 64-year-old man reach back into his own memory for the face of the ground element and come back with nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not a flicker, not a shadow, not the ghost of a recollection. And that was the moment. That was the actual moment, and it was so much smaller and so much worse than anything she had spent 11 years imagining. "No," he said. "That's what I thought." Maya said, "Should I?" "I sat at your table for 6 hours," she said. March of 2014. "At the end of it, you asked me if I had anything to add. Nothing." "There was a recording," Maya said. 41 minutes long. You listened to all of it. You didn't fast forward. Arthur Kessler said he'd give you that for the rest of his life." Something moved behind the man's eyes. Just barely. Like a fish under ice. "And then you took your glasses off," Maya said, "and you said, 'I'm not going to let one dead man cost me the next 100. The airfield was silent. "His name was Miguel Rios," Maya said. "The one dead man. He had a son. The son is 13 now. His mother has sent me a Christmas card every year for 11 years, and I have never opened a single one, and that's mine. That one's my failure, and I own it, and I'll own it forever. But the reason I couldn't open them, sir, the reason I sat in a parking lot for 2 hours listening to bagpipes and then drove away and threw up on the shoulder of Route 50, is that I believed the world had heard what happened to Miguel Rios and shrugged." She took one step closer. "The world never heard it. You made sure of that. And you don't even remember my face." He said nothing. "Say something," Maya said, and the man in the very good suit looked at 12 people standing in a line on an airfield 4,000 miles from Virginia and said the only sentence he had ever needed. "You're making a serious mistake." Maya Reynolds laughed one last time. "No," she said, "I made the serious mistake. In a hallway in 2014 when a captain told me he'd walk it in, and I said, 'Thank you, sir.'" She looked at him. "This isn't a mistake. This is the correction." Behind her, Priya Raman's phone buzzed and Priya said out loud across an airfield in a voice that carried, "It's sent." The man's face finally moved. "What's sent?" he said. 26 minutes ago, Maya said. A 28-year-old systems analyst sitting in a rental car in a Virginia parking lot sent 41 minutes of audio, a gate log 300 hours of camera archive, a charter passenger manifest a compliance ticket time, stamped 2 days ago, and a signed statement from a retired Navy captain to the Department of Justice, the Inspector General, the contracting officer, 4 newspapers, and her own mother. He said nothing. "Her name is Ruth Alvarez," Maya said. "You don't know it. That's been the problem in this entire time, sir. You built a whole life out of knowing the names of the people who matter." The man in the very good suit said, "You can't prove I was in that car." And Maya Reynolds said, "Camera 9 can." A 64-year-old man stood alone on an airfield, and understood that a 20-year-old kid had gotten written up in 2023 for losing footage that wasn't his fault and had been furious about it and had bought a hard drive with his own money out of spite and had zip-tied it inside a camera housing and had never told a soul. That's not, he said. He stopped. He tried again. That's not how this... And then Charles Prentice, 6 years retired contracting officer's representative for the Meridian Project, stopped talking entirely because there was nothing left to say and nobody left to say it to. He sat down on the tarmac. He just sat down. And Maya Reynolds stood over him and waited for the thing she had been waiting 11 years for. The flood, the release. The moment it all came out of her at once. It didn't come. There was just an old man on the ground and a woman standing over him and 41 confused security contractors and a boy of 26 crying quietly and a 23-year-old holding a hard drive like a baby. That was all. That was the whole thing. She turned around and walked back to the line and Ghost said, "You okay?" "No." "Yeah," he said. "Me neither." 11 weeks later on a Saturday, Maya Reynolds sat in a parking lot in San Diego and could not make herself open the car door. She sat there for 40 minutes. Then the passenger door opened and a 73-year-old woman got in and shut it. "Mom, I'm not saying anything," Eleanor Reynolds said. "I'm going to sit right here." "Mom, I have nowhere to be, Maya. I brought a magazine." They sat. After a long while, Maya said, "There's a bench." "I know. There's a bench with his name on it, and I've never seen it." "I know, baby." "Mom, I don't know how to walk over there." Eleanor Reynolds said, 1989. Maya closed her eyes. "Don't." "You were 4, Eleanor said. "And I couldn't make myself go into my own house, and a very small person in a nightgown climbed into my lap and said, 'It's okay, I'll go first.'" Eleanor put her hand over her daughter's hand. "Baby, listen to me. Somebody went first for you. A boy went to a stranger's porch. A girl put a laptop in a closet under the Christmas things. A man got on a boat to Lisbon. A kid climbed a wall. They all went first." "Mom, so you don't have to," Eleanor said. "That's the gift, Maya. That's the whole gift. Nobody's asking you to go first this time. You just have to go." Maya Reynolds opened the car door. The bench was small. That was the thing nobody ever warns you about. 11 years of building a monument in her head, and it was a bench with a small brass plate on the back of it, and there was a 13-year-old boy sitting on it who stood up when she came across the grass. He was very tall. He had his father's hands. "Are you Maya?" he said. "Yes. My mom said you'd come eventually." And at that, Maya Reynolds, former Navy SEAL who had not cried at a review or a plaque, who had cried for 4 seconds in a school gymnasium next to a rolling suitcase, who had stood on an airfield and watched a man's whole life end and felt nothing at all, put her hand over her mouth. "She said that, she said it every year," Miguel Rios Jr. said. "She said she'll come when she can carry it." "I opened them," Maya said. "What?" "The Christmas cards, all 11. I opened them all in one night on the floor of my kitchen." Her voice was destroyed. "I'm sorry it took 11 years. I'm so sorry. I thought the world had heard what happened to your dad and decided it didn't matter, and I couldn't look at you knowing that." The boy looked at her for a moment. "They didn't hear it," he said. "No, they heard it now." "Yes," he nodded slowly, working something out. "Everybody at school knows my dad's name now," he said. "I never had that. 13 years, and I never had that. He was just a guy who died. And now he's a guy who died, and everybody knows when down." He wiped his face roughly with his wrist, the way boys do. "People keep telling me it's not enough, and I keep telling them you don't get it. It's not nothing." Maya Reynolds sat down on a bench in San Diego next to a 13-year-old boy. She sat all the way down. The investigations ran for 2 years. Charles Prentice took a plea 11 months in and served 4, and the number felt obscene to every single person who had been standing on that airfield, and it was still 4 more years than the truth had ever cost him before. Arthur Kessler testified for 9 days without a deal of any kind and went to prison for 6 years and never once asked for less. And on the 3rd day, he leaned into a microphone in a room full of cameras and said, "I said yes, sir," and a man died, and I have been saying yes, sir, ever since. Gerald Whitlock got 18 months in a divorce and a granddaughter who was told a version of the story that was mostly true. Dmitry Sokolov was never charged because a federal prosecutor stood up in a courtroom and said the words, "This man spent 4 months entirely alone doing the only useful thing available to him." And Peter Lang came home from Lisbon and held onto him in an airport for a very long time without saying anything at all. Daniel Reyes testified in a borrowed suit, pled to a felony, and served 9 months. The day he walked out, Maya Reynolds was standing in the parking lot and she said, "Hello, Danielle." And a 26-year-old man sat down on the curb and cried like a child. Ruth Alvarez never went back to Atlas. She works for the Inspector General now. There is a plastic reindeer on her desk, and she will not explain it to anybody. And a year and a half after that airfield on a Saturday in Coronado, Maya Reynolds walked into a room with 300 people in it and did not run. Ghost was standing at the door. "You came," he said. "I paid your price." "You did." His eyes were wet, and he didn't care who saw it. "Maya, you know what happens now, right? They're going to say your name out loud. All of them. For hours." "I know. Can you stand it?" 2 years almost to the hour after 3 men climbed out of a gray van on a quiet suburban street in Virginia and put a gun against the back of her head, Maya Reynolds stood in a doorway and said, "No, but I'm not going to run out of the room." And that is the whole thing. That is the only lesson in it. And it was never about a woman who knew how to fight. They put a gun to her head because they had read a file and decided they knew exactly what she was. They were right about every fact in it and wrong about the only thing that ever mattered. Because a file can tell you what a person has already done. It cannot tell you what they will do next.